Skadoopy-doo, skadoobly-dooby, skadoopy-doo, skadooby-dooby-dooby-dooby-doo-doo-doo. Ba-ba-da-ba-da, ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Wah, 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 wah. Nice. Good morning. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. The problem is I don't know where anything is. Well, I just don't know where anything is. I'm going to try and turn you off. Oh, there you are. Perfect timing. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright, shiny faces. This is the way we start our new day. I broke a nail last night. I was moving some boxes. And I broke a nail. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not going to do anything about it, actually. Yeah. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Hey, see you next Tuesday. Looks like we're going to start this little nonsensicals. This one is, let's see. Which one is this? The hell? Whoops. This is the intellectual property enforcement activities by the executive branch. That mean Joe Biden. So mean. I don't know what this is about. And if we're bored with this one, we can go to another one. But I can't. There seemed to be quite a lot of little committee hearings. None of which were like incredibly, interesting, I guess. I also thought they were going to do a vote to vacate the chair. Is that anyone heard that? Is that going to happen? Is that going to happen? I don't even know. But anyway, good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing good today. I hope you're doing a good day today. I hope your day's great. I hope it's very special. I hope you get everything you want. I hope you get your shit done. I realized I woke up this morning. I'm not actually that tired, but I feel like really like, draggy. A little bit draggy for a Tuesday. Do-doodly-doo-doo-skadoopy-doo. My eyes feel like really small. You know how those, when you wake up sometimes and your eyes feel really small? That's what it feels like. That's all. That's what I got. Okay, so let me actually also, because there were some other hearings, so I just want to remind myself of what the landscape looked like. Hold on just a minute. Okay, so that's the judiciary. Oh, there's a Homeland Security. That's the Coast Guard. I don't know about those guys. Acquisitions. Oh, yeah. It's not even just about the Coast Guard. It's about a specific process within the... thank you to my volunteer, part-time, once-in-a-while producer, Mindy Conway from Twitter, who's helping me curate some items for the Daily Down Lolo. So I really appreciate her doing that when she has a moment. That's so nice. And she did send me that Biden will be speaking at the Holocaust Memorial Museum today about Holocaust Remembrance Day. So that will be something that's happening this morning too. We may switch to that. And then let's see what else I had. Oops. Upsy pupsy. Upsy pupsy. God, what? Wow. People send a lot of emails. All right, so we have. Oh, we've got some rules committee stuff happening. Let's check C-SPAN. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you. Oh my God. Oof. That's a bit of a sneeze. Oh. Achoo. Achoo. And Mindy also let me know there's a hearing, which I will try to find, including it's a rules committee. It looks like for 4 bills, including legislation requiring a citizenship question be added to the U.S. Census in 2030. And members will also try to override President Biden's veto to block an NLRB joint employer status rule. So we might check that out too. Let me see actually if I can find that. What is that one? That is Rules Committee. I subscribed to that. Why didn't it come out? Doodly doo doo doody doo. Skadoobly doo doo. Skadooby doo. I really don't like. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sniffle in the microphone. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on that, actually. I'm going to keep an eye on the House Rules Committee. Wah, wah, wah. Good morning. Hi, Peace Love. You're working and lurking. At a girl. I like it. I like it a lot. Let's see. Oh, these guys don't have any. Wow, everybody's late. Why is everybody late? I am not late. I almost was late, but I'm not. I almost was late. I feel like I'm having like allergies or something today. Maybe that's why my eyes feel so small. I don't know. But yeah, it must be some kind of allergy, something. I don't usually get that kind of stuff though. Not, not all the time, like very infrequently. Seems to have been worse this year though. That's what I'll say. That's what I'm going to say. Let's see what else. What else? Let's see. It's Tuesday. Don't forget to check your voter registration. I'm not kidding because they do these things.
Since the ranking member of the full committee is here,
here we go.
I'll give you 10 seconds.
I hope you guys can hear it. Let me know if you can't. Can you guys hear him speak? So let me know.
The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We welcome everyone here today to a hearing on intellectual property enforcement activities by the executive. For $715 billion, I believe that is an understatement. As far back as 2017, the cost of counterfeiting copyrighted and pirated software and the theft of trade secrets in the U.S. was estimated to be between $225 billion and $600 billion.
Is it back?
Unsurprisingly, the People's Republic of China is the lead culprit. Last year, more than half of Custom and Border Protection's total seizures of goods came from the People's Republic of China and their captive satellite, Hong Kong.
Shit.
These seizures accounted for 80% of the value of all IP infringing goods that were seized. China is not only flooding the market, but the CBP, with its de minimis exception parcels, finds itself with more than 1 billion parcels. There is not enough money in the Treasury to search 1 billion parcels properly, particularly when we don't know what's in them. Yet, despite these significant economic and security threats, there has been a steady decrease in enforcement actions and prosecutions under the current administration. In 2023, the Department of Justice filed only one copyright piracy case. By the way, I had to correct that from two. I've had to cut in half the amazing performance. There has been a drop in IP-related seizures at the border. No surprise, they're busy with other issues. But in fact, when you look at $1 trillion in an economy, it's meaningful. It's meaningful because of, for example, the amount of theft from this country exceeds the entire Department of Defense budget. The current administration did not nominate a new head of the Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator until May of 2023 and has not pushed to have that position filled. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons that the nameplate is empty, is that the acting or doing on behalf of declined to come. Additionally, the U.S. Trade Representative declined to come. Underscoring these failures by the Biden administration to prioritize IP are two empty chairs here this morning. I want to make it clear. We'll clear off the empty chairs. We just wanted to make it clear that we appreciate the people who are here. We appreciate your being here. Your testimony is important. We all know that you're not the problem, but you're here to explain what the problem is and how we can work together on solutions. With that, I would recognize, are you ready? Yes, the ranking member of the subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking you for convening this important hearing. The agencies represented here today are on the front lines of preventing piracy, keeping counterfeits off the market, and securing our businesses' trade secrets. And it's important that we, as one of the committees responsible for their oversight, have the opportunity to engage them about their work. It is one of the quirks of our intellectual property system that, in many cases, it's up to the IP owners themselves to enforce their rights. If an individual holds a copyright, trademark, or patent, that intellectual property is worth very little unless they police it themselves. An individual can hold a patent, for example, but that patent is only as good as its owner's ability to enforce it in a court of law. Some IP protections, however, are also policed by the federal government. Customs and Border Protection prevents products that violate our intellectual property laws from entering the country. Homeland Security Investigations, through its IPR Center, works across nations and with international governmental agencies to prevent theft of American IP. And the Department of Justice, through its investigators at the FBI and prosecutors with CCIPS, investigates and prosecutes intellectual property cases ranging from piracy of e-books to trade secret theft at the highest levels of American business. Their work is essential to our economic competitiveness in the United States. Just last month, an article in Bloomberg declared that my home state of Georgia, quote, is booming like it never did before Joe Biden became the 46th president, end quote. That is in part because of our strong IP protections for creators, innovators, and artists, including those who call the Atlanta area home. But enforcement of intellectual property protections helps more than just our economy. It also keeps consumers safe. Counterfeit products can pose real dangers to Americans. Imagine learning that your car is equipped with an airbag wasn't manufactured to American safety standards, or that the moisturizer you just brought, the makeup you applied, or even the pills you took for a medical condition were made with cheap toxic chemicals, or that the batteries you brought on an e-commerce site might start a fire in your home. When counterfeit products slip through the cracks, these dangers become all too real. In many cases, consumers, manufacturers, and online marketplaces don't even know that the products are counterfeit until it's too late. I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses how their agencies are working to prevent counterfeits and pirated goods from entering our stream of commerce, including managing the increase in de minimis shipments from e-commerce sites and scaling up enforcement by adopting AI-driven systems. Another threat to consumers comes from cybersecurity risks posed by digital piracy. Today, it is all too easy to unwittingly download a file from an illegal source or click on the wrong links for a live-streamed cultural or athletic event. And then there is the economic harm associated with piracy. According to recent estimates from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Global Innovation Policy Center, digital piracy and illegal streaming services cost our economy about $30 billion per year in lost revenue. The work these agencies do to prevent online piracy helps keep our economy strong, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses about recent successes of taking down pirated streaming operations and how they plan to increase enforcement of copyright piracy. The agencies represented today are staffed with dedicated and capable public servants, but the challenges they confront cannot be solved by the American government alone. It is crucial that we work together with other governments and their law enforcement agencies to combat the real dangers of IP theft to the health, our economy, and the safety of our citizens. Finally, I appreciate that we often work in a bipartisan nature on this subcommittee. Our work reaffirms the principle that we do not need to agree on everything to get some good work done. But putting these empty chairs here appears more political theater than good, honest policymaking or oversight, because the Senate has not yet confirmed an IPEC, and I encourage them to confirm Ms. Robinson's nomination as soon as possible.
Is there an echo?
No one available to appear here. And with regard to USTR, Congress has a responsibility to accommodate the executive branch. Stunts like this make the back and forth harder, not easier, and I would advise against it in future hearings. It's my hope that we on this committee can do our part to safeguard intellectual property, continue our trend of strong economic growth, and keep consumers safe. I thank the witnesses for appearing today, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
I thank the gentleman. We now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Nadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, intellectual property in the United States at its core is the right to own an idea. The power of IP is not in the individual movie, the chemical compound, or the store sign, though they certainly have value, but in the exclusive authority to reproduce that protected content. Because it's difficult to put most creations in the stream of commerce while also keeping them under lock and key, the enforcement of IP protections is key to the success of our system. If the ideas we protect are easily stolen, then they hold no value. And if copyrights, trademarks, and patents have no value, then the American system cannot encourage innovation, protect consumers, help drive economic growth, and keep our country safe. Responsibility for IP investigation, enforcement, and prosecution is spread across multiple agencies within the executive branch. The Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section at the Department of Justice is responsible for protecting American businesses by stopping copyright piracy, prosecuting trademark violations, and preventing economic espionage. The National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, or the IPR Center, within the Homeland Security Investigations Branch at DHS, acts as a hub for all its enforcement activities, combining regulatory, civil, and criminal authorities to execute a mission that varies from investigation of crimes to educating the public about IP theft. Finally, Customs and Border Protection enforces our laws at our ports of entry, inspecting packages and shipments for counterfeit goods and collaborating with other agency leads to shut down IP violators operating overseas. Our witnesses today represent these agency departments tasked with federal enforcement of our IP system. Their authority is clearly broad and wide-ranging, from enhancing cybersecurity and stopping copyright piracy to counterfeit enforcement and protection of trade secrets. And recent technological innovations have further complicated this already complex web of enforcement responsibilities. The widespread availability of 3D printing to create counterfeit goods, of artificial intelligence to replicate copyrighted works, and of advanced technology to make pirated live streams available to living rooms around the world have all made it harder to protect Americans' creative works. Technology innovations that allow users to evade IP protections do not mean we are in a post-IP world. Far from it. America's leadership in AI, our flourishing research institutions, and our diverse creative communities show that strong intellectual property protections mean a healthy innovation ecosystem. But as those who wish to take advantage of our IP system change how they do business, our approach to enforcement, too, must change. I'm particularly looking forward to hearing from our witnesses how the shift to selling counterfeit goods on e-commerce platforms has affected their work. Over the past few years, violators have increasingly moved to e-commerce sites to ship counterfeit goods into the United States. This has been accompanied by a related change from larger shipments to smaller parcels containing counterfeits that are easier to evade detection. Between 2019 and 2022, those smaller mailings of counterfeits increased from a little over 400 million to nearly 700 million shipments. I was glad to see recent data from the Biden administration that HSI initiated 81 criminal investigations and conducted 94 seizures related to its e-commerce enforcement operation in fiscal year 2023, preventing hundreds of thousands of dollars in counterfeit goods from reaching the market, while also securing several indictments and convictions of bad actors. I am concerned, however, about the ongoing proliferation of counterfeit products available on e-commerce platforms, and I look forward to reintroducing my bill, the Shop Safe Act, with Chairman Issa soon, which will further reduce the number of dangerous counterfeits online. While threats to Americans' intellectual property come from many different countries, including within the United States,
I can hear the dog, so I'm going to go take him for a quick walk. BRB.
This reality underscores the importance of our patents, our trademarks, and our copyrights, not just to our creators and businesses, but to our national security overall. Over the last year, the chairman has held multiple hearings on the IP threat from the Chinese government. And at every one, I have emphasized the importance of protecting our system from nation-states seeking tactical advantage by violating our innovators' rights. At each of these hearings, however, I have also cautioned my colleagues that recognizing a threat from a foreign government is different from treating every citizen of that country as a threat. I was glad when the Biden administration ended the China Initiative, which sought to target individuals based on where they were from rather than what they were doing. This strategy ruined successful careers while yielding no meaningful results, and I'm looking forward to hearing about DOJ's successful prosecutions since it changed its approach. Finally, it is imperative that the agencies responsible for the protection of our intellectual property rights can coordinate across agencies to maximize their effectiveness. The White House Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator, or IPEC, is tasked with coordinating a whole-of-government approach to the enforcement of IP rights. While the office continues to do good work, the Senate, unfortunately, has not yet confirmed President Biden's nominee for coordinator. I sincerely hope that Ms. Robinson's nomination is considered soon so that she can begin the important work of ensuring our IP laws are supported across the administration. I'd like to thank Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Johnson for holding this important hearing, and I extend my appreciation to the witnesses for appearing before us today. I look forward to hearing how your agency's activities fit into the larger picture of IP enforcement across the government, and what resources you need to further prevent IP violations by those who seek to take advantage of our system and our creators. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Without objection, all of their opening statements will be included in the record. It is now my honor to introduce our distinguished panel of witnesses. Mr. Michael Ball is the Acting Assistant Director for Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, Global Trade Division at the Department of Homeland Security. In this role, Mr. Ball oversees operational activities of HSI and GTD's national program related to trade enforcement and intellectual property and counterfeit proliferation investigations. He also serves as the acting director of the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center. We also have here Mr. Josh Goldfoot. Mr. Goldfoot is the acting deputy assistant attorney in the Department of Justice Criminal Division, where he supervises Criminal Division Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section and the Child Exploitation Obscenity Section. He has previously served as the Principal Deputy Chief of the Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section for 8 years and served as Deputy Chief for Cyber Policy in DOJ's National Security Division for 3 years before that. Welcome. Mr. Brandon Lord is the Executive Director of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, Trade Policy and Programs Directorate. In that role, he is responsible for policy enforcement priorities and stakeholder outreach related to CBP's priority trade issues. He also oversees the 21st Century Customs Framework Initiative and 2 ongoing pilots, the Section 321 Data Pilot and Entry Type 86 Test, which cover the review of what we will refer to repeatedly today as de minimis e-commerce shipments. Not present, and regrettably, the Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator. Although the Office of Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator is critical and exists for a reason, no one was nominated for the first 3 years of the administration, and when nominated, the nominee has not been confirmed. For that period of time, there has been an acting or performing duties as who declined to come, stating that they were career professionals and inappropriate. I might note for my members here on both sides of the aisle that we have 2 actings here. This committee does not assume that we can have somebody who's been confirmed when no one's confirmed. We take the acting or the person most knowledgeable, and we take them as prepared to answer the questions, and by the way, as dedicated public servants who deserve to be in that position. Lastly, with great disappointment, the U.S. Trade Representative declined to be here. We had many important questions, some of which I will now ask unanimous consent that these public documents be placed in the record. That stack of them is sitting there at the empty chair. Without objection, so ordered. These documents were the only ones we could glean, but they do include important information that we wanted to ask about, including the TRIPS waiver, items that USTR has authority over that do affect the ability for countries to, in fact, participate in a way that can undermine the work of the other 3 witnesses here. Those would not have been the only questions, but within our jurisdiction, they would have been the ones that we were most interested in. So I would ask the staff to remove the name tags of the individuals who were not able to be here, and would ask the 3 witnesses to rise and take the oath. Do you solemnly swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? So help you God.
I'll say whatever I want.
Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. For the witnesses, please know that your written testimony will be placed in the record in its entirety. So that gives you the ability to read your statement, or summarize, or even go off message, but please try to stay as close as you can to 5 minutes so we can get to a round of questioning. With that, Mr. Ball is recognized for his opening, or for his 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Johnson, and distinguished members of this committee. On behalf of the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, thank you for the opportunity to testify before this committee. Homeland Security Investigations, formed by the Homeland Security Act in 2002, is the largest investigative component of the Department of Homeland Security, empowered with broad legal authority to conduct federal criminal investigations into the illegal cross-border movement of people, goods, money, technology, and other contraband throughout the United States.
His name is Ball.
With the authority to enforce more than 400 federal statutes, HSI investigates, disrupts, and
Good
dismantles
morning, John.
organizations and national security threats seeking to exploit the customs and immigration laws of the United States. HSI's footprint extends to more than 6,800 special agents, assigned to 235 domestic field offices and more than 90 international offices in more than 50 countries. HSI's international presence is the largest within DHS and enables HSI investigations to reach beyond our borders. HSI's cadre of internationally deployed special agents, colonel analysts, and mission support personnel work alongside locally employed staff and foreign law enforcement partners to advance the HSI and DHS mission around the world. I serve as the Acting Assistant Director of HSI's Global Trade Division. The Global Trade Division provides oversight and support for criminal investigations of U.S. import and export laws to ensure national security, protect the public's health and safety, stop predatory and illegal trade practices, and prevent sensitive U.S. technologies and weapons from reaching transnational criminal organizations and foreign adversaries. I also serve as the Acting Director of the National IPR Center. The IPR Center leads the federal government's efforts to enforce international trade laws and to stop global intellectual property theft. In FY23, HSI initiated 623 cases, 434 criminal arrests, obtained 327 indictments, and 206 convictions related solely to IP theft and commercial fraud. The IPR Center disrupts and dismantles criminal networks using a whole-of-government approach, including interdiction, investigation, outreach, and training. Created in 2000 and codified by the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act of 2015, or TFTIA, the IPR Center is responsible for coordinating the federal government's enforcement of IP laws. The IPR Center focuses on criminal investigations impacting health and safety, national security, and the U.S. economy. We have programs dedicated to addressing counterfeit pharmaceuticals and medical devices, consumer electronics and technology, automotive parts, luxury goods, apparel, cosmetics, and digital piracy. We also identify and investigate counterfeits in the U.S. government supply chain, with an emphasis on counterfeit microelectronics in the DoD supply chain. Together with IP administrative and regulatory agencies, including the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the IPR Center stands at the forefront of IP enforcement. The IPR Center structure leverages the authorities, resources, and skills of each participating agency. The IPR Center is headed by HSI, with deputy directors from HSI, CBP, and the FBI. Each of the agencies represented at the IPR Center bring their unique authorities, jurisdictions, and culture together to coordinate a whole-of-government IP approach. The key to the IPR Center's operating model are our partnerships. We partner with federal agencies, including DOJ, Department of Commerce, State Department, Food and Drug Administrations, Veterans Affairs, DOD, and many others. We also partner with international law enforcement agencies, academic institutions, and private industry. While each partnership is unique, the goal is always to enhance each organization's capabilities in furtherance of investigative case support, training, and outreach.
Stormy Daniels is testifying at the moment.
The IPR Center maintains robust partnerships and significant engagement with private industry, range of industry leaders, and industry associations. Protecting IP is a global problem that requires a whole-of-government approach. Strong partnerships with private industry and continued collaboration with academic and public partners. HSI and the IPR Center are on the forefront of IP enforcement, leveraging the strengths of our partners to constantly adapt to the evolving tactics of transnational criminal organizations. I welcome your questions. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Goldfoot.
Good morning, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Johnson, and the members of the subcommittee. My name is Josh Goldfoot, and I am an acting Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. And thank you for the opportunity to testify today about the important work of intellectual property enforcement in the Department of Justice. I'll say it's also an honor to be here today with Mr. Ball and Mr. Lord, two representatives of agencies we work with so much in enforcing intellectual property laws. The core responsibility of the Criminal Division is to ensure the enforcement of U.S. law through effective prosecutions, to vindicate the interests of the public and to deter unlawful conduct. The Criminal Division prosecutes all federal crimes not otherwise specifically assigned to other divisions. The Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section, which is abbreviated CCIPS, and we pronounce it CCIPS, is a section within the Criminal Division, and it executes the Criminal Division's work in enforcing intellectual property statutes. The members of the IP team at CCIPS prosecute criminal IP cases, as well as serve as a source of expertise for other prosecutors, including more than 260 computer hacking and intellectual property AUSAs and investigators across the country. CCIPS works closely with the investigative partners at the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center to coordinate among multiple jurisdictions in complex IP matters. The internet and the globalization of trade make IP crime truly a global problem. To counter the problem of international IP crime, the department focuses additional resources funded by the Department of State on international engagement, including developing relationships and engaging in cooperative enforcement efforts with foreign law enforcement agencies, supporting training, case-based mentoring, and other capacity building where appropriate. Central to the department's international efforts on IP enforcement is the International Computer Hacking and Intellectual Property Program, or ICHIP program, a network of federal prosecutors with expertise in IP crime and other high-tech legal issues, stationed in U.S. missions in key regions around the world, and supported by U.S.-based legal experts specializing in internet fraud and public health, illicit markets, cryptocurrency, as well as digital forensic experts in CCIP's Cybercrime Lab. While IP is a key driver of the U.S. economy across many sectors, some technologies protected by IP rights have national security implications that warrant extra attention. The department, led by my colleagues in the National Security Division, takes a multi-pronged approach to identify and counter nation-state threats to U.S. IP and technology that affect U.S. security interests. The Criminal Division works with the National Security Division to advise on trade secret and economic espionage cases and prioritize those with an international or nation-state connection. In February of 2023, the Deputy Attorney General announced the creation of the department's Disruptive Technology Strike Force, a partnership between the Department of Justice and the Department of Commerce, designed to enforce U.S. laws protecting U.S. advanced technologies from illegal acquisition and use by nation-state adversaries. Under the leadership of the department's National Security Division and the Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, the strike force brings together experts throughout government, including the FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, Defense Criminal Investigative Service, and 17 U.S. attorneys' offices in metropolitan regions across the country to target illicit actors.
I was looking for a play-by-play. I don't have one yet. Yeah, she's definitely. I really appreciate. Hi, Deidre. Good to see you.
In conclusion, the department appreciates the opportunity to present information
the misogyny that's going on right now and is off the charts.
In collaboration with the other agencies represented here today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
The misogyny, sorry, I didn't know I was muted,
Mr. Lord.
is off the charts. And
Good morning.
Anyway.
Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Johnson.
So,
and
sending out good
distinguished
thoughts to
members of the
Stormy.
subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today.
She's got
to
this.
discuss
She
U.S.
knows.
Customs
She knows how to.
Protection's
She knows how to
role in
act.
enforcing intellectual property rights
She knows how to
and private
protect
law.
herself in a
I
scene.
am proud
So.
to represent the nearly
There you go.
30,000 CBP officers, trade specialists, and others who enforce U.S. trade laws and protect our national and economic security. Trade in counterfeit and pirated goods threatens America's economy and industry, the livelihood of U.S. workers, and in some cases, national security and the health and safety of consumers. By some estimates, counterfeit products cause over 70 deaths and 350,000 serious injuries every year. Furthermore, trading these illegitimate goods is frequently linked to smuggling and other criminal activities. That's why CBP has designated intellectual property rights as a priority trade issue since 2007. Last fiscal year, CBP seized and destroyed over 23 million counterfeit items valued at $2.7 billion had they in fact been genuine. CBP is on pace to achieve similar results this fiscal year. CBP performs its IPR enforcement mission in a challenging and dynamic trade environment. Increasing volumes of small packages valued under the $800 de minimis threshold has significantly altered the dynamic of the international trade environment and CBP's intellectual property rights enforcement approach. Small packages arriving at our seaports, airports, and land border ports of entry pose the same health, safety, and economic security risks as traditional containerized shipments, but the volume is higher and growing. The 600 million small packages that CBP processed in fiscal year 2022 increased to more than 1 billion in FY23. And now, today, CBP is processing close to 4 million small packages every day across the nation.
That's a good one, Ooh. Don't know why. Seems my trial's gone awry. Stormy Daniel.
For all imports, from de minimis packages to
She's
traditional
got
containerized
my
cargo,
number.
CBP
Wait, I don't know what,
hundreds of
what
US
rhymes
trade
with
laws and
Daniels.
regulations on behalf of over 45 different U.S. federal agencies by applying our advanced targeting capabilities, collaborating with Homeland Security investigations and other government
Seems my
partners,
trial's
and
gone
engaging
awry.
industry stakeholders.
Stormy Daniel.
Partnerships and information sharing are the cornerstones of CBP's IPR enforcement strategy.
Gag me.
For example, CBP has an integral role in the IPR Center. In addition to my position at CBP,
While I
serve as one of 3 deputy
Stormy
directors of the IPR Center.
Daniels.
My staff works side by side with our colleagues at
Keeps-
HSI
wait,
and 30 additional
keeps.
partners to strengthen our joint enforcement efforts. Collaboration between the
Coming
IPR Center
back
CBP
around.
ports of entry
No, that's not
generated
very good.
thousands of IPR-related case leads last year for
That's
potential
good though.
criminal
That's very
investigation.
good.
We also work
Yeah,
very
that's a good
closely
one
with
though.
private industry.
That's a great
Thanks to the support
start.
of Congress, the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act of 2015 expanded CBP's authorities to allow direct
Might work on that.
engagement with
I
intellectual
should do the
property
music
rights
stuff
holders
this
to
afternoon.
further protecting the owners of intellectual property,
I do that.
stopping
Okay,
counterfeit
sorry.
products from entering the United States. Building on our current authorities and capabilities, CBP is working in
Is this
close
about
coordination with
fentanyl? Is this
Congress
about
and
like?
our trade stakeholders
Is this
to
about
advance
like
21st Century Customs
purses?
Framework Initiative,
Is this
commonly
about
referred to as
like
21 CCF, to ensure the agency
knockoffs?
is positioned to address these evolving trade enforcement challenges. Information sharing, an activity proven to be a
I don't know.
vital
What is
tool
the
for trade
what's the
enforcement, is a central
what's the
pillar
dirty
of
little
this initiative.
secret here that I'm missing?
21 CCF includes a statutory concept that would authorize CBP to share additional information with private industry beyond a shipment-specific event to better identify and track illicit sellers who use online marketplaces to import IPR infringing goods into the United States. The 21 CCF
Is this
initiative
Amazon,
also
like
pursues several
anti-am?
other
What are we talking
processes
here?
that would allow
What are we
for
trying to
more efficient
stop?
seizure and disposition of
Where's Matt
IPR
Gates going to
violated
come down on
goods
this?
in the de minimis shipment environment and stricter penalties for non-compliance.
That's like the third use of de
In all shipping
minimis, and I'm
environments,
here
CBP
for
is
it. I
committed
love
to
that
protecting
word.
businesses and
Underutilized.
consumers from the health,
Really,
safety, and economic
way too
risks
underutilized.
associated with IPR violations. CBP will continue to collaborate with Congress and our government and private industry partners to identify workable solutions to IPR.
Like, share,
enforcement
subscribe.
Chairman Issa,
Share the
Ranking Member Johnson,
broadcast. We're actually
distinguished
appearing
members
on
of the
Twitter.
subcommittee,
I don't know how we're
thank you
doing
for your
it, so
continued
don't tell
support of
Elmo
CBP's
that I'm
trade
on
enforcement
Twitter,
initiative.
but we are.
Look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I'll now recognize myself for a quick round of questioning. Mr. Lord, from your experience, you gave us nearly $3 billion of seizures, 23 million seizures, some of which were in the de minimis, but most, I assume, were in larger shipments. Is that correct?
No, sir. Actually, the 90%.
I'm not going to
of
get
our,
excited every time they say that word. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So the de minimis environment, the $800, or at least alleged to be $800 in value, because if they're true Louis Vuittons, they would be more than that for just one. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, sir. I'm not 100% familiar with the going price for a Louis Vuitton bag. My wife might be better at that, but yes, if the bag as a genuine article is in fact valued at more than $800, it would not be eligible for.
So when these come in at $800, sometimes they actually are more than $800 selling price, but that's what they claim. And the reality is this is a backdoor and abusive system that particularly China has figured out. And is
So drop
gaining
shipping,
to the tune
is
of
that what it is? It's kind of like a
parcels
drop
year.
shipping complaint. It's China. It's China.
Well under $100. So while we see shipments that are declared higher dollar value, and there certainly are instances of legitimate shipments being valued over, being well valued over 800, but being declared under 800, the vast majority of what we see from a value perspective is in fact much less than $800.
So in order to fix this, we have to deal not at going from 800 to 400 or 200. We have to deal with the fact that a $50 or $100 declared value is in fact very, very often, and I'll use that fake Louis Vuitton as an example, but it could be a fake
She's
Rolex.
probably
It could be
like
any
at the
number. It
bathroom
could
break.
be,
She's
as
probably
the
checking the
ranking member
stream.
said,
So
counterfeit cosmetics that
Message-
literally can
message
burn your
sent.
face. It could be any of that.
That's correct.
So this is but it is clearly a backdoor, something that you do not have the authority to change. Only Congress does. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're looking at other ways, sir, to better manage that risk environment. It is, at close to 4 million small packages a day. It is an area of concern for us. We're looking at making changes to our regulatory environment, as well as making investments in key infrastructure and technology to help us better manage that.
Let me ask one quick question. It may tax some of the expertise, but it's a potential solution. As somebody who shipped to and from around the world for years, and sometimes using Speed Post and other systems that offer that de minimis opportunity, if you were given the authority not only to reduce the amount, but also to create two categories: known shipper, meaning the shipper of de minimis who has been cleared, who has that responsibility because they do ship, for example, to
getting
Amazon
stoned,
regularly or
like
whatever,
on the blanket.
and then concentrate on those who
Is that a Temu
are not,
thing?
if you will, a trusted shipper.
I've never bought anything
Would
from
that
there.
help in your authority if Congress gave you that
I think like
specific
during the
opportunity?
pandemic or whatever, my daughter bought something from Shein,
Thank you,
but
Congressman.
that's about it.
I would start by just saying,
Since then, we
given
haven't.
the very real economic benefits of.
But I use
de minimis
Amazon, and I feel like
exception,
that's the same
I'm
thing.
not sure as a law enforcement agency.
I feel like it's just as bad for the globe.
What the dollar value should or should not be in that environment. Regarding the known shipper idea, that is an idea that we are looking at internally. The challenge in the environment, without spending too much time on it, sir, is it's very low barriers to enter as an overseas shipper, very low incentive to learn our laws and our customs regulations and our requirements, and the cost of being caught is too low to deter bad behavior. So what that means is the minute you figure out somebody might be trusted or somebody might be a violative shipper, they may disappear tomorrow and reconstitute as a completely different entity. And since this is all overseas, it does
I appreciate that. And Mr. Ball, I apologize for not having time to ask all of your questions, but Mr. Goldfoot, my round of questioning and any additional time I have will really concentrate on why are there so few prosecutions in this area? Are they incredibly difficult? And I'll just give you a quick example, hopefully a quick answer. I was a shipper. I was an importer. My products came from
I had
Hong
one
Kong
in
and
fake
Taiwan,
crocodile
almost
once. It was
exclusively
pretty
from Taiwan.
cute. I liked my de
Fake security
minimis.
systems came in from South Korea. They were discovered
It's just such a
inside
great
what was
word,
purported to be garment.
I think.
They had no business being in to begin with.
Is he talking
I
about
was able
snakes?
to
What
get
is he
the
talking
seizure
about?
Of it. I was able to get customs
There's too many
and border to
goddamn
eventually destroy
snakes
them.
on
I
this
was even able to
goddamn
get
plane.
one sample so I could verify that not only was it not mine, it hadn't been transshipped, but the Korean manufacturer, who he was, and so on. We knew who the Korean manufacturer was. We turned that over. Of course, they knew where the product was going. There was no prosecution. So I ask you today, because this is an old one, but it obviously is still happening, why is it you do not routinely send the FBI or other agencies to the recipient of large counterfeit shipments and follow up with prosecution more often than
Counterfeit
the
de
records
minimis.
indicate?
That's right. American-made de
Thank you
minimis.
for the
I
question.
like mine from
So,
France.
I think your question also hints
Frankly.
at some of the answer.
I like French de
which is to
minimis.
say that these cases can
Yes, it
be
came from
quite
China. It took 4
complex.
months to get
And
here. It
while
has
it is
Batman
one
and
thing to
Joker.
detect at the border that goods are
Has
counterfeit, seize them
Batman with a
disposable
Joker bong,
appropriately.
Pooh Bear with a pot full of
Identifying
weed,
defendant
Huckleberry
who would be
Hound.
charged
That's so
with,
fucking awesome, though. I'm sorry.
with proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's
Getting
something that needs to be
court, particularly if they're in Korea or
made
some other
with
foreign
not
jurisdiction,
chemicals.
requires considerable resources.
My question was
Did you know there's an option on when you're doing a search, a filtered search on Amazon? For some products, you can select does not contain lead.
Here again, there can be some difficulty in identifying that there is all the necessary elements of the case, such as
I was looking for like a cold bowl, like an insulated bowl. And when I was searching for one, it was like,
given the resources
yeah, I
we
want to
have,
exclude the
we are
ones that have
prioritizing
lead.
cases in trademark and counterfeiting that
I
affect
think.
health and safety. For example, a case I like to think
Maybe I
of,
don't want
we
lead
did think
in
about 2
seeping
years
into my
ago, was 2
acai bowl.
individuals from Ukraine, Maxim Yendov and Lolo
Debbie with a doobie.
both ran a company
Oh,
called
easily.
Healthy Nation.
Just funny.
This company was importing counterfeit cancer medicine.
This
into
the
United
world
States.
is fucking
These were pills
bananas.
that were marked
Banana
as though
cuckoo.
they were, legitimate
That's what
cancer
we've
medicines.
entered. We've entered
They had
banana
inactive
cuckoo phase.
ingredients. They did nothing. And unsuspecting Americans
Fucking
were
hell.
receiving this
Yeah, I'll
counterfeit
take mine
medication,
lead-free.
taking it, hoping to treat their cancer, and there were disastrous results. We focus on cases like that. We focus on a case like we sentenced last week, Mr. Oxoy, who was selling counterfeit Cisco routers. These routers were being sold to hospitals, to government installations, and they were counterfeit. They didn't work, or they didn't work longer than a few days. They were patchy things that the actual company would never sell. You can imagine the threat to health and public safety that occurs from those. So I think you and I agree. I would like to see more counterfeit prosecutions.
Who
as
the
well.
fuck?
I think
Who
probably anyone who
the
works in law
fuck is
enforcement
doing
could
the
ask them about
procurement
who's satisfied with the amount of cases
for
you're
these
doing.
things?
Whether it's
Are you
IP or
kidding
some other
me?
field, we'll say no.
What procurement
Given the
officer
resources
or
we
anyone
have,
in
we're
charge
looking
of
to
procurement
create
in any
maximum
organization
benefit for the American people.
and what
you.
management chain is going to approve that
Thank you, Mr.
purchase
Chairman, and let me say straight out
of
that,
off-market?
this subcommittee
Come on now.
is very unique in terms of the Judiciary Committee in that the leadership of the committee
I
has
can't
always
understand
been,
how stupid.
the leadership of the subcommittee
That's
has
so
always
stupid.
been open, forthright, and apolitical when it comes to the operations of this subcommittee. And so I made some comments about the empty chairs here this morning. I'll note that the markings for the empty chairs have been removed. And that's a testament to the good faith of the chair of this committee, who sometimes can be misunderstood in terms of his actions, but nothing that communication cannot cure. So I appreciate the chairman. And Mr. Lord, in your written statement, you discussed the increase in the use of de minimis administrative exemptions to reach consumers directly, including over 1 billion shipments, and those are coming in at the rate of 4 million per day. As you
For our
said.
Congressional Fashion
That process
OOTD
by
outfit of the
CBP
day, for those of you who aren't
fiscal
cool
year
enough to know what that
2023
means.
alone. Can you walk us
This
through
is
how
the outfit of the
e-commerce
day.
sites
The
are
light
driving an
blue
increase in these
with that
smaller
kind of
shipments?
brick red, like perfect shade of brick
Thank you,
red
Ranking Member. I appreciate the question.
shirt.
I would just
Great
begin
kind
by
of
saying,
slate blue
we actually
jacket
believe
on the
internet
darker
at
side of
large
slate.
is driving
That's the outfit of the day. That's the way
almost any retailer or any
a man
website
should
can
dress.
order something. Maybe it's online,
Or
maybe
a
it's an online
suit.
marketplace.
I like the
maybe it's
suited
a
look in that
favorite clothing brand,
combination.
and that gets shipped
Not
to
everyone could pull it off,
from overseas, oftentimes the American consumer.
but it's a great
Not
combination.
knowing that it originated from overseas. Having said all that, sir, the challenge that we face with online marketplaces is that it's very easy to sign up as a seller on those online marketplaces, as a foreign seller. I'm talking about foreign sellers only. I'm not talking about U.S. citizens selling. foreign sellers selling on these online marketplaces.
He sounded a little nervous about that, right? Like, I'm not trying, don't send me emails.
Given on what the expectations are to comply with U.S. laws, especially if you're shipping a product that might be regulated, say, by the Consumer Product Safety Commission or maybe the Food and Drug Administration. And then when that sale is made, it's very easy to just drop that into your country's post service or use another freight forwarder or logistics
Thank you for our
provider
62
to move
viewers
that
right
into countries
now.
food
Shout out to everybody over there
last
in
thing I would say is challenging
Shitterland,
about that, too, is it's
watching
very
from the
easy for a
Shitterverse.
foreign seller to,
Thanks for checking
take
in
down
today.
their
We've
listing
stayed at
on
a
an online
solid
marketplace,
60 to
move to a different
62
online marketplace,
beautiful
or
people.
even stay on the same online marketplace, but just come back.
Sorry.
Sooner.
But yeah, we have 62 people.
All that
Yeah.
makes our targeting and interdiction that much more difficult.
That's cool. This is the power of Twitter, people, unfortunately. Fortunately or unfortunately, Twitter is the bigger audience. And that's the way to get our message out. So we might as well use it. Use it for good and not evil like everybody else is. Or a few people are, not everybody. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. It's a great question. So the Innovation Lab within HSI is relatively unique in federal law enforcement. It's an entity in our Cyber and Operational Technology Division dedicated to out-of-the-box thinking using advanced technology to further criminal investigations. When I started working criminal investigations, I'm dating myself a
Thank
bit.
God somebody's thinking out of the
When we
box.
planned for a search warrant, you'd have to take into account renting a truck and getting hand trucks and boxes, moving file cabinets and boxes of paper to go through. Today, that's not the case. You're dealing with terabytes and petabytes of data that are collected on search warrant or through other court processes that we have to sift through. The Innovation Lab is currently using AI technology to help criminal investigations sift through those court processes to identify items of evidence, things that we're looking for that are in that search warrant, to take criminal investigations with the goal of taking those criminal investigations down from that aspect of it, from weeks, months, in numbers of people, now down to much shorter. So we're very
I'm a
proud of
morning
that
person.
effort that
But Karen, you meet up with me in the afternoon and I'm going to be snoozing. I'm going to be falling asleep. So, yeah, unfortunately. That's my thing.
Follow your abuse.
But no, I'm a morning person.
I thank the gentleman for part of that. With that, we go to Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Goldfoot, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics,
This is a real
DOJ
love
filed
fest.
only 6 new trade secret theft cases in 2022, as compared with over 91 cases filed between 2017 and 2021. What are your thoughts on why that happened? Why such a reduction?
Thank you for the question. So I think when I look at trade secret case statistics, I'm a little less concerned about fluctuations from year to year. I focus more on the impact of what we are doing and how we're using our resources to best serve the American people.
It's like little bunny frou
What I mean
frou.
by that is trade
Little
secret
bunny frou
cases
frou and
are
hopping
truly
through
some
the
of the most
forest.
complex cases that I've seen
Scooping
worked
up
on
the
in the
field
sections
mice
I
and bash 'em
supervise.
on the head.
These are cases that, in addition to
Did
the
you guys sing
difficulties that
Little
come
Bunny
with
Frou Frou?
doing a white-collar case,
Little bunny
typically also
frou
require
frou.
investigators and the prosecutors to become deeply familiar with the technology at issue. And sometimes that means mastery over not just the technology, but an entire
So instead of a
industry
peace sign, I feel
that
like
I've
this
never
is
heard
Little
of
Bunny
or
Frou
worked
Frou.
on before. I think about a
Well, this
recent
one's
case
fine.
we did
Oh, this one here.
involving the chemical lining on the inside
I
of
found one with two opposing thumbs.
BPA free, and that was a trade
Yes,
secret
I
that
love
was
my
stolen.
afternoon naps.
So
I
the
know it's a
work
luxury and not
involved
everybody
in
gets to have them, so I
identifying
apologize.
cases like that, not to mention the different proof issues.
Good
involved
job,
with the trade
honey.
secret
That's what
statute,
his
such
wife
as
is at home right
establishing
now,
all
or
the
his
assets of
spouse
trade
or
secret
partner,
obtained.
whoever
The
is
amount of
his
preparation can be
love
intense.
interest.
Now, I think where you and
Who
I
helped him
agree
pick
is
that tie
the
out?
number
Great tie
is,
choice, by the way.
lower than it ought to be. I wish that we could be doing more of these cases.
Yay, honey, you look so
We're doing what we
good.
can with the resources that have been provided.
You look so great on
So,
television.
coincidentally, in February of 2022,
Ah.
when DOJ
Okay,
ended
let's
the
just
China
buy a
initiative,
bigger shirt, okay? Let's
do you
just
think
commit
there's
to the
any
bigger
relationship
shirt.
there,
Let's
because
go
of
to the
decline in
go to the
prosecutions, maybe
tailor,
because of the trade secret theft and
get your
this-
suit
do you think this decline
whatevered,
had anything to do with
because
the
you have enough
elimination
money to
of,
do
the
that,
China
sir.
initiative?
Well, thank you for the question. I do not think the fluctuation in the statistics was caused by the end of the China initiative. So the China initiative was, I should clarify, this was my colleagues in the National Security Division. I don't want to take credit for their work, but they're continuing to do excellent work in this field.
Trying to like
And
really
further
make it
to
realistic.
say, the Assistant Attorney General Olson, at the same time that he canceled the China initiative, he launched a new initiative, the
Wait, let me
National
see if I can
Strategy
pick
to
something
Counter
up. Hold on.
Nation-State Threats. The same work as before, looking about China, the PRC's theft of American
All right, let's see
intellectual
if I can.
property,
Well, here.
continues
I'm
to
gonna
be
try and pick
done
this up.
under
Hold
that
on.
present initiative, and
Oh,
now also
oh,
through
oh!
the Destructive Technology Strike
Too
Force,
slippery.
which has been in effect for about
Need
a
something
year.
less slippery.
You can look at recent
Oh, here we go.
announcements out of
Here we
National
go.
Security Division. In March 2024,
I can't
they
really
announced
press
new
it. Well, I
cases
could
of
try and
arrest of
press
an
it.
individual who is taking technology related to electric car
My
batteries.
finger like
and,
one little
planning to
bit
give
up.
that to
There we go.
PRC-related company. There was
There we
another
go.
case in March
Oh, I can't put my
2024 where
lips on
someone
it because
attempted to steal
it's
files
too
from
much.
Google
Here we go.
related to
Oh, here we
artificial
go. Oh,
intelligence
I almost had it.
technology and give it to a PRC.
I'm trying not to use any other finger.
So I see
Well, I'm probably trying. I'm
NST's
going to ruin
work
it if I
in,
just.
countering
Okay, hold on. Look at.
intellectual property theft to benefit the PRC
Oops, I'm
continuing.
trying to move my.
What Assistant General Olson said when he canceled the China initiative is he was concerned that the name was giving people an incorrect impression that the department was cutting corners in these cases. And he found that to be harmful to his prosecutor's work.
Thank you. I'm going to sneak in one more question here. I'm concerned with the amount of counterfeit goods coming into the United States under de minimis, which we talked about before. But Mr. Lord, how are they leveraging the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center when it comes to specifically vaping products,
Whoops.
which has suddenly
Whoops.
risen, I
Whoops.
think, in overall concern about some of the knockoffs.
It's a little
I
hard
think
to do
you're
that.
seeing
Like, this would be
globally right
easier.
now. Can you talk about any specifics of that?
Happy to. Thank you for the question.
Don't. Just stop talking.
Our approach
Please
to
stop
vaping
talking,
products
sir.
in this space is very similar to what we do.
This is kind of boring. I'm sorry.
Anytime our officers are to make an interdiction
Sorry.
or detain a good, they do two things. First, they call the partner government agency that might regulate that product. In the case of vaping products, that's the Food and Drug Administration, to get some advice on what to do, what should the ultimate disposition of that product be. And then, of course, we have our special agents from Homeland Security Investigations at all of our ports of entry where these goods are coming in, and they'll alert HSI.
I'm in a silly mood. I'm sorry. I know this is a serious
That
topic.
work that starts at that port of entry
I apologize.
then moves up to the National IPR Center as appropriate, based on, sometimes most of the time, it's a pattern of seizures, right, that might speak to certain means, methods, and tactics that warrant a more specific, criminal investigation or additional action by the other government agencies that are at the IPR Center.
Yeah, yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Nadler, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ball, last year, HSI opened 81 criminal investigations through its e-commerce program, iOS. These operations included 94 seizures with an estimated value of over $300,000. How does HSI and the IPR Center work with e-commerce platforms to prevent the intrusion of counterfeit goods into the stream of commerce?
That's a great question, sir. We found early on in the flow of e-commerce, especially in the increase of de minimis, that we were running into an issue. One of the things that we do at the National Intellectual Property Rights Center is coordinate very well with industry. The major e-commerce platforms were encountering counterfeits, were encountering bad actors, but weren't talking to each other. Worried about trade secrets, worried about bad publicity, worried about things shifting from one to the other. We brought the four major platforms together,
With a
Amazon, eBay,
dandelion.
Alibaba, and Walmart, to create an e-commerce
eBay.
task force.
What?
This e-commerce working group,
Amazon,
we
eBay,
were able to use some great
Walmart.
common practices and some best practices that we had used with the automotive industry, with the airbag issue, where they created an industry group called A2C2 that's extremely effective, and bring that to bear on the e-commerce platform. So to date, they have agreed for a joint counsel. They have agreed to a third-party data contract where they can share that information with each other. And then that information also flows to HSI for criminal investigations as well.
Thank you. Mr. Goldfoot,
Wait, what?
just a few months ago in March,
Wait, what?
the GAO submitted a report to Congress.
What about
with
smaller ship?
recommendations-
Wait, what?
recommendations
What about the U.S.
stronger
Postal
fraud risk
Service?
management in the
I'm
trademark
confused.
The study found that in recent years, there have been a growing number of trademark applications with false or inaccurate images of goods that are not actually sold or used, making it more difficult for businesses to find unused
Sorry, I
trademarks.
guess it's Marketplace. Then what about
GAO
Meta?
warns that, quote, as generative AI becomes more advanced,
I don't know.
potential for more
Something's not
sophisticated
right.
fraudulent activity could increase, close quote. Though the GAO primarily directs this warning to the PTO, it flags that it would be incumbent on the DOJ to pursue charges when the PTO discovers such instances of trademark fraud. Are you aware of the GAO's report, and how are you thinking about the use of generative AI to facilitate fraud?
Well, thank you, sir, for that question. I was not aware of the report you just described, but now that you've brought it to my attention, I'll absolutely look at that. I think we are looking at all the different ways that artificial intelligence changes the game in the enforcement of intellectual property laws. I think you can look at it from two different directions. One is, how does it make crime easier, such as the situation you described, where people are using generative AI to create meritless trademark filings. Also, we're within the Department of Justice looking at how we can use it to improve our own enterprise and improve our ability to go after intellectual property crime.
Thank you. Mr. Lord, in a 2018 study by the Department of Commerce, the authors discussed the introduction of counterfeit semiconductors, including chips infected with malware, into the product supply chain for defense manufacturing and operations. Counterfeit chips are a significant concern for our national security, particularly
Who knew
because many of these
dandelions
products
would be so important?
originate in China, where multiple
They really
cyber
get a
intrusions
bad
against the
rap.
United States have originated. Could you explain how infected chips affect our national security and what your
They're like
agency is
hard
doing to prevent this
workers.
problem
Like
from
they
spreading?
fucking never stop. Never
Thank
stopping.
you, Ranking Member. I appreciate the question. Yes, happy to explain. So first and foremost, Customs and Border
I mean, I don't
Protection
really-
works
I'm
closely
sorry, I
with
don't
private
really like
industry on such
them.
matters.
I apologize.
It is very difficult to expect a CBP officer working at a port of entry to just be
But
able
what
to
an
look at
underappreciated
semiconductor and make a decision on counterfeits.
plant.
That's why we lean heavily on our donation acceptance program, which is an authority that Congress gave us in the Trade Facilitation
They're like
and Trade Enforcement
salads,
Act of 2015.
metaphors.
What that program allows is for
Prolific.
private sector industry to donate to CBP authentication devices.
They're like a
Cisco
they
and
have
Apple
like a
are
ton
two
of shit
that
going
have
on
signed up for that program
all the
now
time.
and provide
They're
those
always
devices
working.
to our officers.
They're blowing their
to
seeds
help
everywhere,
make better
trading
determinations
other
around
dandelion
authentication.
plants.
In terms of the danger of getting
They're
into
very
the
hard
military
workers.
supply chain,
Yeah,
we're regular
absolutely.
participants,
Cheers.
through the IPR Center and an operation
Always.
called Chain Reaction.
Always
which is
here at the
entirely
lounge.
focused on keeping semiconductors out of sensitive supply chains. The Cisco case that Mr. Goldfoot referenced earlier came out of that very operation, and CBP had a role in interdicting counterfeit shipments, identifying the means, methods, and tactics, referring that to the investigators, and then also participating in the search warrants that helped build that case.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
Gentlemen, thank you, gentlemen. We now go to the gentleman from Oregon for 5 minutes, Mr. Benz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lee.
Thank you, witnesses, for your testimony today. I'm looking at an article from Reuters dated October 18th of 2023, where they say
Hello,
5 countries
darling.
came together, including United States, Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and made comments following meetings with private companies in Silicon Valley. FBI Director Christopher Wray said, excuse me, the unprecedented joint call was meant to confront the threat China poses to innovation across the world, from quantum technology and robotics to biotechnology.
I mean,
and
it's just I haven't really
artificial
thought
intelligence.
about it,
China
and
is
that's one
stealing
plant
secrets
that I don't
in various
particularly
sectors.
like in terms of visual
It
or.
goes on to say,
But I can. Well, now I can. I guess I could. I guess it depends on the depiction, right? But what a great. I mean, what a
what
hard-working
makes
plant.
this so challenging is all the tools deployed in tandem at a scale of the likes which we have never seen,
And like
Christopher Wray said.
fantasy,
Officials
like
called
it.
for private
You know
industry
how
and academia,
remember when in
to help
Fantasia when the
countering those
dandelion like
threats, chief among them, which they said were
seeds
artificial
become
intelligence
ballerinas or
tools.
something? Is
We
that
worry
doesn't
about
that
AI as an
happen?
amplifier
Kind
for
of.
all
I
sorts
mean,
of
really, that's
misconduct.
kind of an
Wray said,
amazing.
accusing China of stealing more personal and corporate data than any other nation by
Give
orders
back.
of magnitude. Mr. Lord, so
Oh, getting
assuming
close
that
to your
Mr. Wray is
day
correct,
job,
which
huh,
he
Lee?
is,
Uh-oh.
how have you focused on China? Or you can share that. I hate to blame you, but how has your organization, in following what
Yeah,
Mr.
don't,
Wray said,
please.
responded?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I'm not.
Thank you,
familiar with the
Twitter. We're at
specific meeting
81
that you referenced,
viewers.
sir. I'll be
Yeah,
happy
the
to
power
look
of
into
Twitter,
it,
y'all.
and
I'm
send
telling
that
you,
to
I hate it. I hate
What
the
I can
fact
say
that
as a general
Twitter
matter
is such a popular, you know, like such a horrible platform that we're all on, by the way. So,
technologies
hello.
from the United States. So
But
Customs and Border Protection
it
works
is
very
really the
closely
largest
with
way
Congress's
to
Bureau
get
of
your
Industry and
message out
Security,
right now,
which
for
is
me
tasked
anyway.
with
And so,
enforcing export of
welcome,
sensitive technology.
shitter
Through that
viewers.
partnership,
Welcome over
we
there
do
on the
make
shitter.
interdictions at export,
You're
when we
so,
get
it's
the
so
correct
nice to see
information
all of
from
you
the Bureau of
again. It's
Industry
been a
and
I'm
minute.
asking,
I don't know
are you
how I
focusing
snuck
on
in the
China?
back
That's
door,
my
but I
question.
did.
And if so, are you prioritizing China? That's my
And I
question.
do it again.
I apologize, sir. Yeah, so we're responsible at import for managing all threats. And in the context of IPR, well over 90% of counterfeit goods come from China and Hong Kong. There are consistently named
That would be crazy,
on,
Lee.
USTR's
That would be
Special 301
insanity.
report as a source for counterfeits. We are absolutely concerned about that threat, and it's something we think about every day.
Mr. Ball, same question.
Again, as my colleague said too, not being familiar with the interchange that you mentioned, I can't tell you on that same line to even go a couple steps further. On the export of sensitive technology, that is part of what we do under HSI Global Trade. We have our counterproliferations investigations. And yes, we are focusing on China, on Russia, on Iran, on what's happening in those theaters. With the export of sensitive technologies, we have a wonderful working group, E2C2. It's our Export Enforcement Coordination Center, and we work hand in hand with DOJ and with Department of Commerce using their strike force for prosecutions on those cases.
Let me shift to Mr. Goldfoot. Mr. Goldfoot, you mentioned some activity in this space. How much more do you think
Are
we should be
you
doing?
easily?
than
Is
what
that what you're
you
doing this
mentioned?
spring? Doing
The suggestion
cucumbers,
by
zucchini,
Mr.
tomatoes, lettuce, and
Ray
green
was
peppers?
not enough. Do you
Oh,
agree? And if so, what would you differ?
That sounds so
in addition to what he
good.
has suggested?
Thank you for that question.
Raining
It's a very
today, been
interesting
around
one. So,
garden this
thank you
year, have
also
my
for
cherry
repeating and
tomatoes.
amplifying Director
Yummy.
Ray's comments about this. I think also not only he, but the Office of Deputy
I want to move to the country.
ODNI, in the annual threat report said specifically that Beijing is seeking to increase its science and technology sector in part through the theft of intellectual property. This is absolutely a concern within the Department of Justice. We're prioritizing that. I think to your question of how much more should be doing, what more should be doing, I hesitate to describe the limit of how much we ought to be doing. I think in this field, as you see the amount of intelligence go by, you see information about the extent of the theft, it's just deeply concerning. As I've said before, if we had more resources, we would do more of these cases. We're interested in doing more of this. And I also, having Mike from this, I want to emphasize that within the Department of Justice, this work is primarily coordinated through my colleagues in the National Security Division, who treat intellectual property theft for the benefit of foreign nation states alongside the other ways that foreign nation states are breaking our laws in order to advance themselves.
Thank you. Yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Ross, for her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the witnesses for
Do you
being
mean
with us
fennel
today.
easily?
I'm
Is that
really
that's so
grateful
interesting?
that this subcommittee has shown such a
Uh-oh,
bipartisan
oomph.
interest
And
in
if Max
protecting
is
American
listening,
innovation.
I know we've got some
This
really
hearing is yet another
serious
example of
gardeners
that
in the
focus
House.
and the work between the chairman and the ranking member. Criminal IP theft costs American innovators hundreds of billions of dollars every year. 47% of brands have lost sales to counterfeit goods, a third of which have been reported, and at a drop in revenue of 10% or more. As you know, this is a serious loss to American innovation and one that administration after administration has tried to combat. Mr. Goldfoot, my first question is for you. In 2020, Congress passed the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act to close a loophole in the law that allowed sophisticated criminal enterprises operating streaming websites to traffic illegally copyrighted material. It's important, given that the American motion picture and television industries contribute 2.4 million jobs across the United States. And in 2022 alone, there were over 215 billion visits to pirate sites, many which look much more sophisticated than they did even a few years ago. Piracy of filmed entertainment cost the U.S. economy $29.2 billion annually. Now that Congress has closed that loophole in the law, I'm interested in how this authority has been used. Has DOJ pursued any actions using this new tool?
Thank you for the question. So, in fact, last week, the District of South Carolina, in a press release, announced what we believe to be the first concluded case for the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act. The defendant's name was Franklin Valverde, and that press release came out on May 2nd. However, having given you that example, I don't want to give the impression that the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act has been used as much as you or I might hope. Let me first thank all the members of the subcommittee for the work that many of you did in getting the PLSA passed.
He might be nice. I can't really tell. But his voice reminds me either of Garland Favorito or the guy from Poltergeist 2. And I just can't get over that.
Using the 1976 Copyright Act and other authorities. One example I can give is Gears TV. This was a service that was essentially
I had to do it too.
stealing
I tell stories about fish mulch, but anyway, yeah. Sometimes I don't. I resist the gardening thing too because
another example
trauma.
I would give,
No. Childhood trauma, repressed memory. No. That'd be cool though. Pumpkin. Do they take over? Are they like an invasive gourd?
Stealing the streams from sporting events. So Major League Baseball, NFL, he would get all of them. Now, he would get them through various means, but for Major League Baseball specifically, he was charged with hacking into their facilities in order to get that. Now, that's a helpful example because it shows that when we address these, it isn't necessarily one or two statutes that are always going to get used. In that case, we had a guy who was violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And so he was charged with that and also with the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act. In the end, that was a plea. He pled to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act and not to the PLSA. That was still there in the case and was used there. So the PLSA is a welcome development for us. I agree with you also. Streaming services are an enormous concern of ours. We have taken down, as I mentioned, there was Gears TV. We took down Jetflix and a related site named Unstream It All. I want to take down more. I hate seeing these things up. I'm very interested in everything we can do to address it. With more resources, we can address more of these, but I'm quite proud of the work that we've been doing on it so far. And the PLSA is going to help us do more in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. With the very limited time that we have, Mr. Ball, one of my colleagues touched earlier on AI and China. Can you tell us anything that you're doing to address President Biden's executive order on AI and enforcement for AI?
Yes, ma'am. Very important question. In that executive order, the National IPR Center and HSI were specifically tasked working with industry to find out what threats they're seeing from AI and what these industries, especially the ones that have a large technological support, are using AI to protect their intellectual property. And then creating a training program specifically for medium and small businesses that might not have those resources. At the National IPR Center, with all the partners that we have, another one of the unique things that we have is partnerships with academia. We have these incredible research institutions in the United States. We specifically partner on many of these items with Michigan State University and their ACAP program, their anti-counterfeiting and property protection program, and we have employed their very robust research engine to have PhD and master students reach out to industry across the spectrum. Right now, they have gathered quite a bit of data. Talking to their research lead just last week, it's the best response they've ever received on any research project from industry. So we're in the process of putting that together. One initial finding that I can talk about now is that industry is finding that the initial threat that's coming from AI is using AI to attack their computer systems and hacking, to overcome their encryption to steal their trade secrets. That's just one that's coming out of that, and we'll be working to put together a training course on that as well.
It's all right, I had to make up for my excess and my ranking member's indulgence.
Almost as abusive as...
Oh, don't go there. Important question, important answer. We now go to the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Intellectual property protections are vital to our nation's economic success. And not only that, it is an extremely personal right in a sense, in that it is a right that an individual, or for that matter, an enterprise has to benefit from the fruits of their labor and from their own enterprise. So I think this is a very important hearing because to the extent that our intellectual property laws are not being enforced...
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we move from this hearing to another hearing that's happening around education. Cardone, the education secretary, is testifying, so I'm going to move us over to that. I apologize for those that are interested in this IP. I find it interesting too, but I really would like to hear about the education secretary. So hold on just a second. I'll switch her up.
Seizures of goods from the People's Republic of China
Switch it.
and Hong Kong alone made up more than half
Switch
of the
it.
agency's total
Hold
seizures
on.
and more than 80%
Maybe.
of the value
Maybe
of
I will.
IP infringing goods seized. Approximately
There we
80%
go.
of all economic espionage cases prosecuted by the Department of Justice involve theft of trade secrets by the Chinese government or its instrumentalities or agents, and
Here we
approximately
go.
60% of all trade secret misappropriation cases brought in the United
All right,
States
hold on
have a
just a
nexus,
second. I'm not very
to
graceful.
China.
I
In addition,
apologize.
as of
Good day, sir. I said good day. All right, let's play this.
On his own. What would you like me to say to my constituents who have gone through maybe a given degree of hardship,
I'll just
or maybe
stay here.
spent less money on other junk, and paid off their student loans that way? How would you respond to those folks?
Thank you, Congressman. Look, I'm one of those people who paid off my loans, and I'm recognizing now as secretary that over 1 million people go into default. What I would say to those folks is we are fixing a broken system that will allow more access, better return on investment for higher education. So we're fixing broken policies to make it, this is not something that will need to happen every 5 years. We're addressing it in different ways. So.
I'll agree with
my
you there.
goodness,
What I'm
Jim.
saying in the past,
That's
broken
crazy.
or not, there are people who paid off their loans, maybe even paid them off prematurely because they didn't like being in debt.
Right.
Okay, maybe they worked extra hard. Maybe they gave up other things you could do with your money. but they
Growth
paid
man
them
is
off
a
early,
fucking
and now they feel like
douchebag.
suckers for being responsible. How would you respond to that individual person? if I run into a guy or a parent of somebody who says, you know, my son worked 2 jobs, he paid off his loan, why in the world are these other people getting it paid off for nothing?
Well, I think, you know, it's important to recognize where we are right now. Similar case could be made for those who received PPP loans and got debt forgiveness with small businesses. They were given help at a time where it was tough. Right now, our higher education loan system is broken. We've introduced the SAVE plan, and quite frankly, people going into default in their community doesn't help the local economy. For the teacher that I spoke to who is now able to buy a home, that's helping the community. And if you look at our programs, it's public servants. It's people who were defrauded by their colleges. So we're taking the interest off of loans that have gone on for over 20 years. Thank you.
That wasn't really an answer to my question, but thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Grothman. Dr. Adams, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member, and Secretary Cardona, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here, and certainly I appreciate your visit to my district. Love to have you come back. I've just reintroduced Ignite in my bill. I guess we're calling it Reignite. We're reigniting it, which attempts to codify some of the same efforts from the administration. And as you may know, the President's FY25 budget proposal requested an increase for HBCUs, MSIs, and other underserved communities. These institutions, of course, do play a vital role in educating this country's youth, especially as higher education grapples with ongoing attacks to diversity and equity and inclusion. So can you speak briefly about the work that the department is undertaking to ensure sufficient funds are made available for institutions who have Title III or Title V designations under the Higher Education Act?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And, you know, I enjoyed visiting your district, and I have to tell you, in my visits to HBCUs, whether it was Jackson State, Bowie State, or the AUC, you know, I always speak of the Black excellence that I see there, the entrepreneurship and the sense of punching above your weight as HBCUs. But I can tell you that I've also heard from HBCUs that say, you know, our infrastructure is not adequate. Decades of underinvestment have put us behind the 8 ball, and we need more. So I'm proud that the President in his budget has not only an additional institutional capacity request of $93 million over FY23, but also $100 million to expand research and development. You know, our HBCUs need the labs to be able to compete for the contracts. So, you know, we recognize, because we work closely with our HBCUs, the additional need that they have and how they're working really hard to make it happen. So this budget does reflect the conversations and the work that we've seen in HBCUs.
Right, thank you very much. I just returned from Oklahoma to visit Langston University and to do the commencement there. But since January of this year, roughly 1 institution per week on average has announced its closure or intent to merge. Following school closures, many students struggle to continue their higher education journey. One study shows that fewer than half of students at colleges that have closed transfer to other institutions, and of those students, fewer than half end up receiving their degrees. I had a situation just in my district when I first came to Congress, pretty much. But how has the department enhanced its oversight of institutions at risk of closure since the start of the Biden administration? And can you share more about the efforts to improve the closed school discharge process to support borrowers whose institutions precipitously closed?
Thank you for that. We have done a lot there. We've seen students who were left out in the cold and left with debt and no degree, no earning potential to pay off that debt. Right. So we are acutely aware that this is a challenge. We've worked closely with universities on communication strategies, holding them accountable for recouping where that's possible. And we're tightening up our oversight, especially if these are institutions that have historically taken advantage of students. One last thing, and I think it's very appropriate. We're also working very closely, and I remember having conversations with college leaders and my Office of Undersecretary to make sure that credits transfer, and we help those students land well in another institution.
Okay, great. So the federal Pell Grant program is the cornerstone of federal student aid, and it has expanded access to millions of low-income students since its inception. So can you share a little bit more about the economic significance of the Pell Grant program?
Absolutely. For many students, it is that opportunity. It's that door to higher education. We know college graduates on average make $1 million over the course of their career, more than high school students. So we recognize the importance of Pell. The president has been pushing for an increase, a doubling of Pell. A $900 increase has already been pushed for. And we recognize that it's up to like $7,400 for a student per year. That's significant. We're going to continue to push for that. We're going to continue to simplify the process, make sure it works for our students so they can have access as well.
Yeah, in terms of the programmatic cuts and the harm to future Pell Grant recipients, can you speak briefly about that?
Can you repeat the last part?
The cuts, the programmatic cuts that harm current Pell programs.
Well, the implementation of not only better FAFSA, but also return to repayment for 28 million borrowers, the USDS servicing took place this last year with flat funding last year. So we're requesting in our budget additional funds so we could do a better job delivering for the American people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary, for your service. And Madam Chair, I yield back. My time is up.
Thank you. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Secretary, I've got 5 minutes, so we got to get through this really quick. You'll continue to hear a lot of frustration that your Department of Education has neglected its congressionally mandated priorities for a partisan political agenda. I've heard from constituents and colleges in my district in Georgia who have been let down by the department's inability to meet FOSSA's deadlines and fix errors. You have not had all hands on deck. Instead, you've marched forward these past few months in using time and resources that propose another set of time-consuming regulations. Parents, universities, regents, school boards, teachers are not happy. Costs are escalating as experienced by the behavior in this meeting today. We are a deeply divided country. And I know debt is a problem. But, how do you explain to young people that they owe $100,000 the day they're born in this country? $100,000 the day they're born. What shot have they got? Do you believe it was in the immediate best interests of students and families to assign department staff to your negotiated rule meeting priorities since January?
The negotiated rulemaking process does require staff, and we do believe what we're doing is fixing a broken system, sir. Yes.
Distance or online education has opened the doors to post-secondary education for all types of students, including helping adults connect to credential programs in in-demand fields such as cybersecurity and the many technology careers our economy and security depends on. Do you support allowing students to have access to distance education that is a flexible option for working students?
I do recognize that online institution.
Okay. Do you believe colleges of all sizes should be able to provide distance education programs that meet the standards of their students and the workforce?
Sorry, I couldn't hear your question. I was responding to the last.
Okay. Do you believe colleges of all sizes should be able to provide distance education programs that meet the needs of their students and the workforce?
If they can do it in a high-quality way, I wouldn't make a blanket statement that all schools could.
Then why has the department proposed a requirement which would prohibit a college that enrolls more than 500 students in a distance education program from being authorized by its state through a reciprocity agreement?
So we recognize the importance of giving students an opportunity to have online learning, and even with institutions that are not in their state. What we want to make sure we're doing is protecting students also, and if a school closes or if there was a challenge with their programming, that they would be protected from paying loans and an education they didn't receive.
Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, let me tell you what this proposal would do. Here's one example. Georgia Tech offers one of the lowest cost online master's degree programs in the country. Prestigious university in my state. For less than $10,000, this degree prepares workers for cybersecurity, computer science, and data analytics careers. Georgia leads the nation in development of cyber talent and research, with 10 of our colleges and universities focused on cyber. The U.S. Army Cyber Command is headquartered in my district, and professional degrees that prepare the cyber workforce should not be stopped by arbitrary regulations that will only stifle cost-effective education. Why is 500 the magic number? Where did you get the number? Do you believe distance education programs with 501 students are somehow not worthy of an
Motherfucking
innovative
magnets. How do
approval
they work?
process, and they must jump through more burdensome hoops to be offered?
I agree with you. Georgia has some amazing institutions, and I want to make sure I work with you and my team works with you to identify the concerns there and work with you to make sure Georgia schools have the opportunities.
Mr. Secretary, I got just about a minute left. I need to move on. Last year, I asked you if you believe canceling student loans would reduce the cost of college. Here we are today, and CPO predicts annual borrowing will increase by 10 to 15 billion over the next decade because colleges will raise tuition rates, and since they know taxpayers will forgive loans as a result of your student loan agenda. So, Mr. Secretary, I need a clear answer for the record today. Yes or no? Are you still committed to making hardworking Georgians with no student loan debt pay for the student loans of terrorist-supporting Columbia University students who have over $100,000 in debt?
We are committed to fixing a broken higher education system, sir, and we can get a lot farther if we work together to make sure that the students in your district can benefit from it.
Well, as college campuses have been thrown into chaos, Americans are waking up to what happens as a result of radical progressive agenda, and Americans don't like it. This includes radical debt cancellation, and I yield back.
I'd like to now recognize Mr. Chair Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just the radical
Secretary
debt.
Cardona, and thank
Just
you
the
for
radical
your
stuff.
dedication to our students throughout your
Not
life
the real
and here in
shit.
this position.
Just the radical
Since
shit.
taking office, the Biden administration has
go.
worked to erase the burden of student debt. This includes canceling debt for 876,000 people, including teachers and firefighters, through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. It includes canceling debt for almost 1 million people through improving income-driven repayment, and 1.6 million for of defrauded students. And just last week, students who were scammed by the now defunct Art Institute of Seattle, who I had met with in my district, finally saw relief after more than a decade, while the previous administration made the process so unworkable that Congress rebuked it on a bipartisan basis. Together, these steps have canceled $160 billion for 4.6 million borrowers, and my understanding is that another 20 to 25 million students will be eligible through programs that you recently announced. This is financial breathing room for students and families who were just trying to get a higher education, improve their skills so they could contribute to our communities, our economy, and our country. All borrowers turn to loans as a step toward economic prosperity, but student debt makes it so impossible for many. And I think it's important that we remember that more than 80% of borrowers report that it holds them back from being able to become homeowners, something you were talking about just in a previous answer. Additionally, 56% of borrowers have to choose between repaying and affording rent and groceries. Rent and groceries. No one should be stuck with these kinds of payments that they can't afford. Secretary Cardona, your department released its first of 2 proposed rules to provide additional student debt relief. What type of borrowers will benefit the most, and how will this improve their financial well-being?
Well, thank you for that. The borrowers that would benefit most are those who have had runaway interest. And I mentioned a teacher who had $30,000 just in interest. That prevented her from being able to even attack the principal of the loan. So that's one. I mentioned public servants. You talked about teachers and firefighters. Bipartisan bill. We want to make sure that you don't have to jump through hoops to apply for that. If you worked for 10 years in public service, if you've paid your loans, it should be automatically discharged. We have a teacher shortage, we have a nurse shortage, and we wonder why. So we're trying to make it simpler to have access to a bipartisan bill that was passed in 2007.
Thank you. Textbooks have been an enormous strain on students' finances. They can cost up to $1,200 annually, and textbook costs are on track to double every 11 years. Students can save by buying used books or renting or borrowing from their library, but some institutions actually automatically bill students for their books. What is your department doing to prevent students from spending more than needed on their books or on other hidden fees that are really preventing students from accessing the kinds of supports they need for a quality education?
No, thank you for that question. As you know, this is in negotiated rulemaking, so I really can't comment on specifically, where we think we're going to end up. But we are taking a very close look at what students are paying for. I'll have 2 in college next year, and I recognize the different fees and what they add up to, and we want to make sure that our students are, the information is transparent and they're getting what they're paying for, and it's not something that's assumed that they're going to need.
Thank you. I want to discuss federal K-12 education funding for children experiencing homelessness. Your department's 2023 guidance for American Rescue Plan homeless youth funding has really been an incredible lifeline for those families. For example, it helps schools provide gas cards and cover car repairs in an emergency to increase attendance. And I know that these funds are expiring soon. Right. What supports does the department have in place for families experiencing homelessness, including for after these funds expire?
Sure, thank you. And you identified an issue that is increasing in our country, homelessness, and making sure that our students are protected and are able to learn and the conditions for learning are right. We're requesting a $129 million budget request for FY25. Programs like preschool programs, supplemental instructions for students that fall behind because of the trauma of being housing insecure, before and after school programs, transportation. As a school principal, let me tell you, that was the most expensive thing. Making sure the student doesn't have to bounce 5-6 different schools under the McKinney-Vento Act to have a solid, consistent education. So transportation and then healthcare referrals is also something that is required.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record this report from Schoolhouse Connection called Overlooked and Almost Out of Time, as well as an article called Grocery Cards and Car Repairs, How COVID Aid Changed the Way Schools Can Help Homeless Kids.
No objection.
I yield back. Thank you very much.
I'd like to now recognize Ms. Hutchin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Cardona, I appreciate you being here today. I did wonder if you might show up, given that you seem to have little respect for our congressional inquiries into the goings-on at the Department of Education. As you know, I recently sent you a letter about the failed 2024-25 FAFSA rollout, but much like parents and college students across the country, as of today, we've not received a response on what you're doing to remedy the problems you created for millions of American families. So today, with my time, I'd like to ask a few of these questions now. I'm a parent to a college student and a high school senior. I'd like to understand what contributed to the delayed and ineffective rollout of the 2024-25 FAFSA.
Thank you for that question, and I just want to assure you that I take oversight very seriously, and communicating information.
Yeah, you sound uber concerned that you don't even know what it is.
Our department has provided over 50,000 pages and responded to 35 letters from this committee alone. I take it seriously and will continue to take it seriously. We've had many delays with FAFSA, frustrating delays that we've have been able to fix. It's working now, and I encourage students who are listening to sign up. If you sign up today.
What would you say contributed to the delays and the ineffective rollout? What were the contributing factors?
There were some programmatic issues that required our engineers to reprogram codes and have.
And how much time were you given from the time the bill passed to the time that you were supposed to roll out?
Excuse me?
The FAFSA Simplification Act, how much time were you given
It's
between
FAFSA.
the time that that bill
Okay,
passed
it's not
to
that
the
hard
rollout
if
date?
you know
it was
what you're
passed in the
talking
last
about.
administration.
So do you know how many years that was?
It's 3 years.
3 years, okay. What is your department doing now to support
Good job,
students
Lee.
and parents who've been unable to submit it, who've been given incorrect financial aid information, or who have not received their estimates? What are you doing for those students?
Thank you for that question. That's something we take very seriously, and we are working very closely to provide resources for families and
What
different
kinds of
languages.
resources?
Well, videos on how to figure it out. We have $50 million now going into communities to make sure that we're knocking on doors for those students and families that still have to fill it out. We have tutorial videos. We have a national strategy in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, school districts. We're working closely with districts. And I have to say, we've also worked on return to repayment, USDS servicing contracts. And what we're doing now to make sure that we improve processing is make sure that our FSA department is designed for the work that's being expected of it, so we're asking for a budget increase.
Given that you had 3 years to get this right the first time, why should we expect that this upcoming FAFSA would be ready by October 1st? I know in the Senate Appropriations Committee you recently said your expectation was
Right.
that it would be ready. Why should we believe that?
Well, look, I can be happy to share what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, but we are taking this very seriously. We know how important it is to our families and to our schools, and our schools have been extra patient and working very closely with us to deal with the updates, and I'm happy to say that 2/3 or more are already processing. We're committed to making it better every year and opening doors to higher education. I can tell you that 60 to 70% of our students on average were applying for FAFSA. That's not acceptable. We need to be closer to the 95% range, and that's what we're going to work toward, and we're going to make sure that it opens doors to higher education for more
Although the
students.
frustration that I experienced in trying to do the FAFSA certainly would deter people from participating in that this year. As you know, the soft launch was
Third time's a
that's Gen X
charm.
term, using the word launch.
Well,
It
but
was
you
clear
have
that
to
it
do
was
it
a
in order to
hasty
get federal
release to
student
barely
aid.
meet
So
the letter of the law
I
by all
understand.
measures.
Actually,
In
we
my
used to
view, it was a
run
disastrous
FAFSA
failure.
workshops
What
at the
grade would you
school.
give yourself and the DOE on the
So
botched
I
FAFSA
understand the
rollout?
FAFSA is
I'm
incredibly
committed to
difficult to navigate.
improving it and working
What
with
grade
them.
would you give yourself?
I'm not in the classroom now. I'm not going to be.
Well, you're the head
providing
of
a
the
grade.
Department of Education, sir. What grade would you give
Stop
yourself?
it.
We are committed to making sure.
Okay, you're
FAFSA
not
works
going to
for
answer the
students.
grade level. I would give you an F. I think millions of American families would do the same. Question, were you
Well,
given a
I mean, let's
congressional
not be so bitter.
directive by law to bail out student loans? Yes or no?
I was not given a
Okay.
congressional.
Were you given a congressional directive by law to simplify FAFSA?
Yes.
So you spent a great deal of department hours, I understand, on the student loan bailout, but apparently not very many department hours were spent on simplifying the FAFSA that you had 3 years to do. Your answers are about as unhelpful as the new FAFSA rollout. Seeing as how 5 minutes is not enough to have this thorough conversation, I sure hope you will consider responding to my letter. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Saunier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I'd grade you differently. I think you've done a great job under
No, and I need
very
it. It needs to be
difficult
easier.
circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I
But
wanna
she's just
follow
being a
up
bitter
on the
bitch. Come on now,
questions
stop.
that Mr. Sablam asked.
Stop.
I've asked you this before about the
Republicans
areas
act
about
like
mental
little
health,
bitches.
cognitive
I
development.
mean, in the bad
specifically.
sense, not in the good
We
sense.
know from CDC and the Surgeon General that almost 1/3 of adolescent girls in this country have seriously considered suicide or attempted suicide in the last year. We know from HHS that young people in 2003, about 5% were identified with serious issues about anxiety and depression in 2003. And in 2023, that number went to 30%. We know from work with, I think I mentioned this the last time you were here, Susan Lin at Harvard, Anna Lemke at Stanford, their work on cognitive development and social media and the
Right.
penetration of algorithms to adolescent neuroscience and the urgency of fixing this. As you see it in sort of the continuum of care for kids in your department, I've been to 70 schools in the 10 years I've been in Congress, and it always comes up in conversations with students, administrators, and teachers. They need more behavioral health. They feel like they're
Absolutely.
overwhelmed. And you saw
Yes,
this
they
in your
do.
career in Connecticut.
You need more
I
social workers.
dealt, with my good friends.
You
our-
need
our two,
more
superintendents of public
therapists.
instruction,
You need
both of
to
whom
give
were
school
constituents,
counselors the ability to
Tom
form
Torlson,
relationships
California,
over
and,
the
Thurman.
number of
This is a
years a
real
student has at
epidemic,
that
and the long-term
location.
societal cost to the
There are
United States
definitely ways to
is
improve
very, very serious. So
the school
tell me a little bit about
experience.
what we're doing and how we're partnering with private sector research to make sure that we are doing this in a nonpartisan, evidence-based way to deal with this really epidemic of anxiety and depression and cognitive changes for future generations.
Thank you for that question. And, I just kind of bring it back to my opening statements. It said, we have a lot of common ground here, and mental health supports for our students is one of those. I'm proud that the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act provided $2 billion to increase the number of social workers in our schools. There's 40% more school social workers. I'm proud that there are 30% more nurses. that there are proactive strategies to help students address anxiety or mental health needs. We know students are 6 times more likely to access mental health supports if they're provided in our school. In our budget, we asked for $200 million for full-service community schools because we know they work to support mental health. But you mentioned what we can do together. Medicaid reimbursement for students who do not have an IEP, we simplified that process so all states could have sustainable dollars. We know that there will be a sunset of BISCA and ARPA, so we want to make sure that there's sustainable dollars, and we're working in bipartisan fashion to make sure states and governors know what to do. That's sustainable dollars for mental health. We cannot go back to the system we had in 2019 of emergency room model of mental health support.
On a related, but how you work with other
New York City, we didn't have that.
When I'm old enough to remember
I was
that when
in
we
New York
did
City schools
reform,
in
the biggest
2019.
obstacle to
You didn't have it then. You had
getting,
lead in the pipes.
on their feet and getting a job, usually
I remember
single women
having a
of color,
fight
or what
with the
you talked about in
facilities
your
guy
opening
for the
comment,
DOE
transportation and childcare.
in New York
So what
City.
are we doing with the different departments to coordinate those
Like
efforts?
what the I'll pay for
20
the
years ago, we still had
goddamn
the same identified
machines or
problem.
whatever
It's become
and
worse
pipe
where I live
what?
in the Bay Area because the transportation and childcare intersect with behavioral health, by the way, for this community to be able to get a job and be independent, which is nonpartisan, hopefully nonpartisan, is still a challenge. And departments working across with each other, your department, DOT, working together, and then with state agencies.
I was at a public charter.
So
I don't
we
want to
have
talk
a
about
whole
which
government
one, but
approach on a lot of things. I mentioned the Medicaid reimbursement.
but I was
We're
in a
working
public
very
school
closely with,
building. I was in a
Health
DOE
and Human
building.
Services to make sure that
So
we're
they
simplifying the process
controlled the
in an
facilities.
interagency fashion. In our budget proposal, in the president's budget
So-
proposal, you'll see an increase in early childhood education, which allows not only for students to address gaps before they grow, but parents are able to work, and the cost of childcare is very high. So we are working very closely at the staff level and at the secretary level to make sure that our efforts are working to support those same families.
Good. Well, I'd love to follow up with you and be able to show where our successes and failures have come about so that we continue to measure those in a thoughtful way and deal with these real epidemics that young people are facing and their parents. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize myself. Mr. Secretary, you're going through great lengths to argue that the new Title IX rule will not have an impact on athletics. Setting aside the absence of court decision preventing it, and setting aside the fact that athletics is printed over 30 times in the rule description, I have some very simple questions, straightforward questions. I'm just hoping to get some yes and no's on it. With energy put into Title IX rule changes, it's a 3-year effort, can you assure us that your rules do not change protection of our girls that have had for over 50 years? Can you assure us that protecting biological girls
Lee
from competing
sneaking
against
over to
stronger, genetically
Twitter.
stronger, bigger, and faster
I don't know,
biological
Lee. I
men
can't recall
will
what
not
you
be
said.
considered
Sorry.
a federal discrimination?
A little high.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. You are referring to the athletics, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that rule-making process is underway. We haven't.
Okay, really, it's.
We haven't finalized the rules.
Okay, so is it a possibility that this girls competing against boys or refusing to would be considered discrimination?
As
Is
I
that
said,
a possibility?
I'm here to discuss, what we're doing in education to help children. Propose rules, whether
It's really a yes or no. I mean, it should be a yes or no. It's a bridge that we all know that you're trying to get across. So just, is this something that you're looking at doing right now? Possibility?
I don't want to comment on a proposed rule that we haven't finalized yet.
Okay.
We have over
All right. Thank you. Let
140,000.
me just continue then. Mr. Secretary, you're in a very unique position to impact the lives, futures, and fortunes of millions of female athletes. Americans on both sides of this debate need to know how deep your commitment is. Would you force your daughter to undress in the bathroom with boys who are
Super
also
glue
undressing?
and baking soda?
I am not going to be commenting
Are
on
you
athletics
kidding
or what
me?
we haven't
Okay.
proposed.
Transphobic
You can't say
fucking
yes or no on that?
fucks?
I'd be happy to talk about a Title IX.
If your daughter was reported she felt uncomfortable in a boy's presence in a bathroom,
He's not a
or locker room,
boy. It's
would that be
a
considered-
trans girl is
by
a
your
girl.
administration, discrimination or bigotry?
Period. Yes.
As an educator for over 25 years,
You can't say yes or no to that?
I'd love to respond to your question, sir.
Okay, so yes or no? Would it be considered discrimination? She did not want that to happen.
As an educator for over 25 years, we have had the
Okay,
responsibility.
all right. I don't have but a few minutes here. Girls have now entered in contact sports of boxing and wrestling. Would you allow your daughter to physically fight and get beat up by a boy who called himself a girl? Yes or no?
Be happy to, once we finalize our regulations on Title IX athletics, to
Okay,
come back
let me
and
just
have a
say this.
conversation with you.
Let me just
my
use this
God,
real quick.
why
There's
are we
Cherokee
in this
proverb that
world
says,
of so
"The
much
man's
fucking
highest calling
hate?
is to protect women."
Why
So she is free to walk the earth
so much
unharmed.
fucking hate?
I'll say this, Mr. Secretary, before I go on to this next topic.
People for who
With all due
they
respect,
are.
I pray
I pray that you
country will never
will
ever have a vision that
find
your policies are now
love
driving us
in
toward
your
in terms of manhood.
heart.
It's a vision that teaches our boys
What?
that harming girls is no big deal.
Excuse me?
I pray
Excuse
that we made
me?
a country that produces overwhelmingly mass
This is
majorities of men who feel the way I do about my
ridiculous.
girls.
Ridiculous.
I would give my life in a heartbeat for my girls. And the blessings I have, they have no doubts about that. The millions of men and women across this
Wow,
country
you are scared of something,
that do
sir.
not have
Why
faith
are what
and not
are you
trust
so fucking
in
scared
you
of?
protecting our girls because of policies you
What
can't
are
say yes or no
you
to.
scared
By the
of?
way, those are not very hard questions as a father. It's either yes or no.
Stop
I cannot
it.
answer that. Okay,
Stop
I'm gonna
it.
switch pages
Stop
real quick.
it.
At the Senate Appropriation Committee hearing last week, you
Oh
stated
my
that there's an
God.
active investigation at Columbia University, but your staff is not on site. As protests and harassment of Jewish students continue at Columbia University, this is an opportunity for the Office of Civil Rights to see firsthand what is occurring and how Columbia is failing to protect the rights of its students. You implied earlier that you were running out of funds. I have a hard time believing the Department of Education is broke. I think it's more of a priority. Is there a reason why that this has not been happening on these campuses? They've not had a presence, and if it had been Black Americans dealing with KKK bigots, would you have the same sense of presence or priorities?
Thank you for the question. Let me tell you, I'm a father, but you cannot pick and choose which students you want to protect.
You cannot choose what?
You cannot pick and choose which students you want to protect. As Secretary of Education, it's my
I'm
responsibility.
sorry, I missed that.
to
You cannot
protect all
choose.
students.
I'm sorry. As a father, you cannot choose what? I'm sorry. I'm not this. We protect all of them, particularly our women, right?
Including our LGBTQ students, sir.
Okay, so if, in other words, you're choosing your those students over women. I'm talking about boys versus girls. That's a very simple question there.
The new
There's a difference.
The new Title IX regulations increase protections to all students and increase protections for women.
This is why American parents are really concerned about this administration. You cannot answer a basic question that makes common sense.
All
right?
means all, sir.
I'll say
No,
this.
they're
I
fucking
know
not.
how I would protect my
You are
girls.
acting
And it seems-
for Fox
all right.
News right
I'll leave it
now,
at that.
you
I'm gonna,
motherfucker. And I don't know who you're auditioning for,
Ms. Macbeth.
but I'm done.
Thank you.
What is the He-Man Woman Haters Club? Like,
Secretary,
get the
it's good to
fuck
see you
out of
again
here.
today. Thank you so much for being before us, and I've read your testimony. Is there anything else you'd like to expound upon a little bit before we get started? It looks like there might have been something else you wanted to say. Please feel free.
No, I think I wanted to, time fell short, but I wanted to comment that in 2009, we had 58 more investigators for Title VI, and we had a third of the cases. We are desperately in need of additional support to make sure we can investigate the cases that we have in front of us. So I welcome support of the budget on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you so much. Well, once again, thank you for being with us today. For the last few decades, we've been focusing on our efforts getting students into college, making sure they get educated, but not enough on ensuring that they actually finish getting
That's
those
true.
degrees or those credentials and actually achieving the goals that they set out to accomplish for themselves, to set themselves and their families up for future success, not just with a job, but really a lifelong career and a career path. And millions of Americans owe tens of thousands of dollars in student
Paul,
debt. And
that's
have
not
no
where we
degrees
go.
or-
That's
or
not,
credentials
no,
to
it's
show
not
for it.
that. I don't know
It's
what his
obvious that this
agenda
not a
is. It
result
sounds
of
like it's
your
kind of
error
like a
on behalf of the
masculinity,
American
men's
people.
rights
It's a
thing,
result of
frankly,
decisions
is what
failing
he
to
sounds
actually
like.
provide
A
the
trad
targeted
rad.
resources and foster the school climate.
I don't know. I don't
that
know
is needed
what
to ensure that
anybody's
every
on that
student can get the
on that
skills,
aisle. It's the
that will help them
politics
to
that I have a
achieve
problem
greater
with.
levels of success
I don't get it.
than was possible
don't get
before
it.
they actually walked on campus for the very first time, or before the very first time that they actually logged into a classroom computer. Now, we know that there are many paths to success when it comes to education and developing a strong and successful workforce. Each is deeply personal, and I'm very proud that 3 legislative initiatives that I actually led in this very committee recently passed the House and echo our mission of meeting the needs of our students wherever they are. My colleagues claim that the American people are fiscally irresponsible, but those are not the Georgians that I know and that I live among every single day, and those are not the Georgians that I represent here in Congress. The reality for most Americans is that the only way for them to be able to afford school is to take out a student loan, usually at a very high interest rate. For decades, we've been telling people every single day that one of the best ways to get ahead in life is they got to have a college degree. And now we're punishing them for trying to partake in the very thing
Glad
that we
to see
encourage
you.
them to do and to doing.
Yeah, I
And
think
that is
I like
skills
to.
that are
I don't want
necessary to move their
I want
families
to
in this
focus on the
country forward.
politics.
Georgia State
Because I don't
University,
walk in anyone's
one of the
shoes
nation's
from that
leading,
standpoint.
leaders in
But
student
I remain
retention and
perplexed by
success,
some people's
and
politics.
my state's largest university
So-
received a post-secondary grant, student success
That's where I
grant,
try to land.
to
but that's
study
that's
their
me.
use of modern technologies. They're using AI chatbots in the first year, freshman year, for those first-year students in math and also literature courses, and their potential to improve the student outcomes.
Bingo,
And actually,
Paul.
I'd like to ask the chair,
Paul
may I
Langan,
please
other
include
Paul
in the
J.
record Georgia State News
The no
Hub?
legislation in
Without
118th
Thank you.
Congress, no solutions, only sound bites.
In 2016, Georgia State began this AI to stay in contact with students over the summer and successfully help to cut
You know
the number
what
of
people should be concerned with is how do you help kids learn after, especially after COVID? Because as someone who was on the front line in 2019, I'm going to tell you right now, they weren't keeping up then.
And so this
So,
new technology and use of technology
I'm
is
just
actually
saying.
helping more students live
Let's
out their
figure
dream
out
of
how we're
attending
gonna
college, because it just
close those
was
gaps
actually
for
able
kids.
to cut down that number of students that were
bet
not
you there's a way.
registering and being prepared. They cut it down by half, and I think that's pretty amazing. According to Dr. Tim Resnick, who testified before the committee earlier this Congress at the invitation of our chair, these technologies support students by reminding them about their assignments, answering questions after hours, and are generally far more accessible for students that may have busier schedules. Some students are parents. Some students are caretakers for family members. So through programs like this that truly put students first, we can address specific factors that are preventing our students from succeeding in the classroom and getting the credentials that they sorely deserve and need, and they're really working towards.
Yes, yes.
Secretary Cardona, is post-secondary student success grants, which I've just talked about, have the potential to become a premier grant program that will assist colleges and universities with their efforts to improve retention and completion rates and ensure student success. However, we know that this program is kind of flat funded at $45 million for the past 2 years. Could you please explain how the department's 2025 budget request of $100 million will provide the students with the necessary means of support that they need to reduce these barriers to their success?
Ms. McBath, I have to say you began your question with 2 seconds left and you're 40 seconds over. So I'm going to ask the secretary to submit an answer to you in writing. Thank you. Mr. Good, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary Cardona, for being with us today. Mr. Secretary, do you think it's a person's responsibility to pay their own student loans?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you think it's a person's responsibility to pay their own student loans?
I do believe students who take out loans should pay loans.
They should pay them back. Thank you. And what if it's hard or if it's difficult to pay it?
Many of the loans that we're providing relief for are loans that folks are eligible for, like
Well,
the
we've
public
long
service.
had relief in place that allowed folks in difficult financial situations or reduced income
to give them some relief of paying their student loans. So what if somebody just doesn't want to pay their student loan or wishes they didn't have a student loan? They should still pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. That's all I'm looking for. They believe they should pay for it. And now, do you understand how federal spending is paid? So federal spending, how is that paid for?
The work that we're doing to
So what I'm asking
address-
is, do you understand how federal spending is ultimately paid for? And it's not a trick question, it's a simple
Right.
question.
No,
Go ahead
but
and answer it if
I
you
wanted
know
to
it.
just kind of go back to the.
No, I'd like to
how-
know if you know how federal spending is paid for ultimately.
Yes.
How is it paid for?
I'm here to answer questions about.
Who
the
pays
budget.
who pays for federal spending?
Taxpayers.
Okay, taxpayers pay for spending, exactly. Whether it's higher taxes or lower purchasing power from Bidenflation or Biden's higher interest rates, they have diminished purchasing power as they suffer under inflation as a result of federal spending. I appreciate you confirming that. So student loan debt, you would say, is legitimate. It's legitimate debt, correct?
Oh, until you break
Is student loan debt
the
legitimate? Is it legitimate debt, or is it
internet.
illegitimate somehow? And it's not.
Oh, stop.
When I talk to students who have
in
been
the
defrauded by.
What I'm asking is student
of
loan debt legitimate? Is it legit? In other words, I would presume you'd say a mortgage loan is legitimate, a car loan is
Yeah,
legitimate,
so was
a personal
PPP
loan or a
loans.
credit
Those
card
were
is
forgiven
legitimate
too.
debt. You would
Bye,
presume those are
next.
legitimate debt.
Throw
I'd
the
love to
PPP at 'em.
communicate how we're helping your
So
constituents.
when someone
with them.
invests
Down
in
with
themselves and borrows for
PPP,
education,
yes,
is
you
that
know
illegitimate
me. I'm
debt, or is
down
it
with
legitimate debt that should be paid for by
yes, you
the person who
know
borrows?
me.
Is
Hello,
there something illegitimate
107
about student loan debt?
viewers. Hello,
The
everyone.
work that we're doing to provide.
Okay, I'm just going
access
to say that
higher
you're not
education.
going to say. So you're agreeing
What
that
did
it's not
Stormy
illegitimate
say?
debt. So do you think we should continue to make student loans when you and the administration are trying to transfer all the
that
debt to the
orange
taxpayers with the latest
guy-
scheme that's been estimated to be worth
man,
gonna cost
there's
maybe
just
even
no good,
$750
like,
billion.
shit coming
So
out.
should we continue to make student
Let's see.
loans? if we're
What
not
was the
gonna ask
line?
folks to
Wait,
pay
I'm
the
going to go
loans?
back. Hold
should
on.
we instead
I'm going
reclassify
back.
them as taxpayer
Thank
provided
God you're in
gifts,
blue,
or should
so
we
I
continue to
can
make student
go
loans?
back. Oh, here we go.
The
Stormy.
75,300 constituents you serve wouldn't call
Where
it a
the
scheme. They would
noise
call it a
are.
lifeline.
So should we
Fixing the
continue to
system.
make student loans?
Here we go. Don't know why.
that we're not going to
Seems
ask
my
people to pay
trial's
back,
gone awry.
or should we go to taxpayer-provided
Stormy
education gifts?
Daniels.
So I understand your line of questioning. So if I can get an answer how
Testifying.
No,
I
what I'd like to know
try
is, should
to-
we keep making student loans if we're not going to ask people to pay back their student
I
loans?
know,
We
Paul.
are
Well, that's what happens with
improving the
Twitter.
repayment process
When I'm
through
able
the
to get to
SAVE plan
Twitter,
so people can be
somehow I'm
successful
getting in the
in
back
their
door
Is
of
there any
Twitter.
reason,
I don't
if I
know
may,
how.
that people who
But when
go
I'm able to
the
get
most
into Twitter, that's why,
so-called
because it's
elite
just a larger
universities,
audience
the ones with the
by
pro-Hamas
nature
protests on
of
their
the
campuses
numbers,
right now.
and so
Should
there
students that go to
tend
those
to be more
universities,
viewers.
which tend to be the elite,
But
because
it's
they're very
great.
expensive.
It's
My
nice.
children could not, and I certainly could not afford to go to school like that.
So welcome,
It would've been a
everyone
waste of
from
money,
the
I would submit.
Twitterverse.
But those
You
who
can
go to
comment
those
too, and your
schools
comments
can
from
make up
Twitter
to
will appear on the
125,000
screen
individually,
below.
250,000 as
That's
a family,
right.
based on the previous original student loan transfer scheme. Should
I'm
others
breaking
who didn't
nails
go to
right and left,
college,
by the
who-
way.
who worked
I just
their
want
way
you to
through
know that.
college, who
I'm
try
clearly
not to incur student loan
college
debt
should
or
be
paid
free.
off their student loan debt, should they have to pay student loan debt for those from those elite schools making above average incomes?
People
No.
are paying their loans
No.
back.
Yeah, they are paying their loans back.
So other people shouldn't pay those student loan debt.
But you know what else?
not
I
what I
really believe in the trickle-up
Are
theory.
paying their loans back.
I don't believe in
The
trickle-down
return to
economics. I
repayment
believe in
is,
trickle-up economics, and that
underway.
when
I'd
you
be happy to have my
provide
staff
more
share with
disposable
you how
income
I'm going to get one last
the
question.
for
here. Thank you, sir.
middle class
In February, the department
and
published a draft
anyone,
proposal that
right?
lists 16 different indicators that the secretary
Then
yourself will use
that,
to determine
I
whether a
think,
borrower is in economic hardship
is
and therefore able to have his or her loan
better
balance
for the
paid
economy.
or really transferred to the taxpayers. However, it notes that the borrowers can have their debt canceled.
People spend
again,
more money.
transferred to the taxpayer, actually.
They go to brunch.
Based on any other indicators of hardship
Look at the
identified
brunch
by
index.
yourself as secretary. Is that correct?
We have over 1 million people
Is it
going
correct
into
that it allows for you to decide any reason why someone can have their debt canceled? Any other indicator of hardship?
Don't
Is that
interrupt.
correct or not correct?
So
we are fixing a
rude.
broken system
So
that
what
requires
constitutional authority do you have to unilaterally decide whether or not someone should pay their student
Companies
loan debt or whether
associated
taxpayers should
with
pay it?
congresspeople receive
welcome to
PPP.
answer
You know me.
it's not as
Loans
simple as
forgiven in a
asking it. So if you allow me to
more
answer, you
precise
might get the
statement.
answer
Yeah,
you're
the
looking
PPP loans that
Madam
these companies
Chair, my
forgiven.
time has
Yeah,
expired, so I yield
exactly. Okay. That's it. Over how much?
Thank
11
you,
billion?
Mr. Good. Ms.
No,
Hayes,
11
you're
million.
recognized for 5
Seems like it was more than
Thank
that.
you. Before I start my questioning, I would just like to say that mortgage loans are legitimate debt, And I can remember in 2009, I was a teacher. I had a contract being paid $37,500 a year. I was also a taxpayer, and I was not a homeowner. And the country decided that we would bail out the mortgage company through the Home Affordable Mortgage Program. And as an American, I recognized that that was good for our economy. And I went to work every day and I paid my taxes, and we bailed out the mortgage industry and the finance industry and the auto industry. So the idea that we draw the line at student debts and people who just want a chance to get ahead or have a fighting chance.
And we got to get rid of
society
Pearson as
is,
textbooks.
just
Get rid of
something I
Pearson.
can't
We got to
wrap
figure out the
myself around.
textbook problem.
But thank
please.
you, Mr. Secretary,
We got to figure
for
out the
being
Common
here,
Core
and
problem.
happy
Please.
National Teacher Appreciation Day. Across the country, university students are exercising their First Amendment rights. I'm going to talk a little bit slow here because this is what I used to have to do in my classroom when I talked about the First Amendments, because my students would always say, but Miss, why are there so many in this one amendment? First Amendment protects the freedom of speech, the press, freedom of assembly, the freedom of religion, and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. All of those things are protected by the Constitution and are imperative to a functioning democracy. When my students would ask me, why are they all in this one amendment? I would generally respond that it is the way that we define who we are as individuals in a complex, changing, self-governing society. There are so many things that I can ask you about today because I believe so deeply in the work that the Department of Education does. I know that the work is life-changing, and it is the only shot that so many of our young people have. But I am deeply concerned by the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on college campuses. Like you, like myself, I know that you believe that there is no place for hate speech or discrimination in education. I also know that as an educator, it's beyond pedagogy. If students don't feel safe and protected in their academic environments, they will not learn. And this is what the department is dealing with right now. As of April 30th, 2024, the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education, which oversees investigations of discrimination at institutions of higher education, has reported many cases of discrimination. Past reporting by Industry Drive has shown a severe backlog in the processing and investigation of discrimination cases by the OCR due to funding challenges over the years. Secretary Cardona, in your testimony, you mentioned that the Department of Education is asking for a $22 million increase in funds for fiscal year 2025 to expand staffing capacity. Additionally, this funding would be used to address the alarming reports of rising anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Many of my Republican colleagues believe that the entire department's budget, including OCR, should be flat funded. I think we have to stop admiring the problem and actually invest the resources to address it. So, Secretary Cardona, how would flat funding impact the ability of the department to process these claims in a timely manner?
It would impact it significantly. Over 90% of the budget requests are for investigators.
You've also said that the investigator caseload is at historically high rates, with at about 42 cases per investigator.
I might go sit outside today,
This would
too.
rise to 71 per investigator, at which you describe as unmanageable. If funding for the OCR was to be increased, what would the department spend that money on? Please be specific.
Investigators to investigate these open cases.
Thank you. We had university presidents here a few weeks ago, and one of the things that they stated was that more guidance from the department would be helpful as they navigate in this space. What has the OCR done to proactively address claims of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim sentiments on campus?
Well, Friday I sent a letter out to over 5,000 university leaders. Myself, this morning, we released a Dear Colleague letter with very specific examples. And if you visit our ed.gov, there's a button there supporting campus safety. There are hundreds of resources there that were made specifically to support universities.
I guess in closing, I would just like to add that it is I think easier for my colleagues on this
Sorry.
committee
Oh, I
to
ruined
dismiss
it.
certain groups of constituencies, but
Sorry,
as an
butterflies.
educator, I know, like you know, that our job is to protect all students and make sure that all students have access to an education, and that we are working just as hard on their behalf as for any other group. Thank you for being here, and again, happy Teacher Appreciation Day. I yield back.
Yeah, happy Teacher Appreciation Day to
Thank you,
all the
Ms.
teachers
Hayes.
out
Ms.
there.
McLean, you're recognized for 5
Thank you,
minutes.
Madam Chair. And I too agree with my colleague on free speech. But
My
let me
college.
just share
I
with
can't
you
stand
what
this
free
woman.
speech does not
Yeah,
protect.
let me say.
And that is, it does not
right
protect
now.
violence.
Right.
It does not protect defamation of property.
Defamation
it does
of
not
property?
Protect threats
Defamation
on
of
one's
property?
life.
What?
So I am
Defamation
for
of
the First
property?
Amendment, but let's be clear, we know what the First Amendment is.
let's just
I
be
also wanna
clear
make
about
sure
this.
that I
One thing,
understand,
okay?
Before I get into my questioning.
And I would like
that
to see the manager.
Department of Education's
Oh, thank
budget
you.
is
I did some color last night, and then I'm going to do some
and we're
highlights
You're asking for $3.7
tonight.
billion.
I do,
For a total
yeah.
of
But thank you. I'm trying to
$82.5 billion.
trying to
And
look
that's just
young.
not enough
No,
money
well,
to do your job.
I might have.
It's amazing
Because it's
to me.
been,
But
like
there's
it's
no
so fine.
inefficiencies that
If
we
I
can
don't
find.
cut it, then the
If
curl
we
kind of
just
like,
give you more
wah,
money,
wah,
everything will be great.
But thanks, yeah.
That was my rant. So thank you for
Yeah, that was a
listening to me on
terrible
that.
rant, and nobody
Mr.
listened to it.
Secretary,
So there.
President Biden's
Okay.
Department of Education
Oh yeah,
has
President
canceled
Biden.
$153 billion in
Billion
student
dollars.
loans, with
But
plans
look
to
at Paul just
cancel
told us that
$1.4
you guys
trillion.
canceled $757
The House of
billion
Representatives said no. We actually passed legislation on that.
of
The
small
Senate
PPP
said no.
loans.
The Fifth Circuit Court said no.
Or
And
of
the highest
PPP
court in
loans,
the
not some
land,
of
the
which were
Supreme
small,
Court
some of
said
which
no.
were huge.
Yet you
Steve
continue
Mnuchin,
to
I'm looking
march
at you.
on.
Didn't he get a loan? Hey,
I would
McLean,
like to
did you
know
get a
what
loan?
makes you qualified
Susie McLean?
to ignore the majority of the
Excuse me?
Congress and the Supreme Court?
What? Are you
Thank
what?
you, Congresswoman.
I didn't
And
listen
let
to
me
her
just
question, to be
repeat.
honest.
Hate has no place in schools. I agree with you. And as the president said, we're not going
Thank
to
you.
condone anti-Semitism on our
Thank you.
campuses.
We can agree on that.
For sure.
That
We
is for sure, butterflies.
recognize
Can
the
confirm.
higher education
Heart of a
system is not
12-year-old.
accessible, not affordable, and it's broken. And we are working within the law to provide debt relief.
The
Because
House
here in
of
Hollywood, we eat
Representatives said
babies.
no.
No, I'm just
The
kidding, we
Senate
don't.
said no. The
I'm totally
Supreme
kidding.
Court said no. Yet you say yes.
Yes.
How is that possible?
How is that
The
possible?
Higher Education Act gives me authority.
Really? Wait,
and
hold on.
So you alone have the authority? Am I
So
correct on that?
you
Implementation
alone?
of
You're higher than the
Yeah.
Congress, the Senate, and the Supreme Court.
Is that
No,
what you
that's not what I'm
think?
saying.
Okay.
You think
I
you're
didn't think
you
I'll
think you're
give an
special?
example. Public service loan
Do you think you're
forgiveness,
special?
bipartisan bill passed in
Yeah.
2007.
Do you think you're a special?
Poorly implemented for 4 years. Only 7,000 people benefited from it.
you think you're
98% of
special?
people were denied.
Oh, really?
We are
Mr.
implementing
Cardone,
it.
I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Cardone,
My question is
I
really
don't want to
simple.
talk about that right now.
What
Baby back
qualifies
ribs.
you to be higher in authority
has
than the
termites in
Congress,
her
the
bed.
Senate, and the
Oh my
Supreme
God. How
I don't
embarrassing.
believe I'm higher.
Thank God she got the
than
PPP loan
But your
forgiveness.
actions would show that.
Then
I'm
she went to
acting
TJ
within
Maxx.
The right, the law with the Higher Education Act.
I would strongly disagree. The
To get
Senate
some
would
of that
strongly
new
disagree,
Calvin
and the
Klein
Supreme Court
underwear.
would strongly disagree. I'm confused on rights
I'm
versus
confused too.
responsibilities.
Me too.
If you have a right to a
Yeah.
loan, don't you have a responsibility
Don't
to pay
you?
it
Yeah,
back?
don't those things go hand in hand?
Thank you.
Okay, what about
So
the
you're in
PPP
agreement
loan you
with
got,
me if you have-
McLean?
If you and I make a deal,
Come on, Susie
and I say,
McLean,
hey,
with your
I
little
wanna buy
black
this car,
shift
that I should pay that car loan
V-neck
back.
and a little white
You
blazer.
have a right if I buy a mortgage
it's
that I'm
almost-
responsible.
it's not-
my neighbor.
It's not really
Not the person across the
Memorial
street,
Day
but
yet,
I'm the
but
one
you
that
know
took
what?
out the
I'm a
loan.
rule breaker.
I knew the risks.
I'm Susie Rule Breaker.
And I have a responsibility.
That's right.
Why is
But
education?
I'm
and
not
loan
talking. I break
forgiveness
rules, but
different?
I break
Because
fashion rules.
should
I don't
have a
break
house.
actual
Thank you
like
for that question.
silly.
We have
payback
predatory
rules.
institutions that are preying on students,
Right.
putting
Thank
them
you.
in debt, and not
We,
providing
we have
them a-
slippery car salesmen that are preying on
Car.
people too.
Well,
so
that's
should
why we have
forgive their
consumer
loans?
protection.
We have.
I'm asking a
resp-
question.
That's right.
I'd
Yeah,
like
I mean,
to
we have
answer-
bad actors
do.
across the board.
and that's
So
why we have
if you're a
consumer
bad
protection, which
actor
is
under
not part of
that
education
concept, I should
department.
forgive
That's
your loan.
another department.
So if a
yeah,
slippery car
thank
salesman
you.
sells me
Thank
a car and
you.
gosh, I just got in a little bit over my
Gosh.
head, we should forgive that. I mean,
Gosh.
using that same
Gosh,
principle.
Susie.
We have a
Gosh.
responsibility.
I'm
to make-
asking a question. So
I'm
are we
asking
going to
a
car loans
question
next?
right
If you're
now.
a shady character and sell me a bad
Well,
car
actually,
loan,
yeah,
the government,
there's
well,
a
not the government,
consumer
you, because you have
protection.
more authority than Congress and the Supreme Court.
No,
we should forgive those car loans too.
No, Elaine.
We have a
no.
responsibility.
The answer is, of course not. We wouldn't do that because we have responsibilities
I'm
in this
reading
country.
from
And I love how
this
we talk
piece of
about
paper,
free
and if you
education. It's
want-
not free.
It's not
Are the
free,
teachers
okay?
teaching for free?
People need to be paid.
We
Are the
fighting-
teachers
Okay.
teaching for free? Really
Is
simple. I know
paper
we
free?
struggled with this last
Is
time. But
paper
no,
free?
they're
They're-
not
no, I
teaching
was
for
gonna
free.
respond. They're
Somebody's paying
underpaid.
for it,
Why
and
are
the
you
people who are paying for
yelling?
it are the American taxpayers. If you have a right, you have a responsibility. And shame on you for going over Congress and the Supreme Court. And with that, I'm over. Thank you.
Fuck you. Fuck
Thank you, Mr.
you.
Klein.
Wait,
Pursuant
wait.
to the previous order, the chair declares the committee in recess, subject to the call of the chair. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. All guests should remain in seats until the witness is allowed to leave the room. So the committee stands in recess.
Fuck you. Oop. Fuck you. Whoops. Fuck you. Whoops. That's not nothing.
Fuck you. Bitches get stitches.
Fuck you. Secretary of Department of
Secretary of the Department of Car Sales. That's fucking priceless. Wait, I'm gonna do another one.
Let's see what sounds like a robot.
That makes you want to talk like a robot.
This one is like a robot too. I am Virginia Fox. I'm the head of this committee. I am now programmed for destruction. Wait, what would I want to say if I was like coming down? And over your eyes and see me. And over your eyes THC weed. And nobody get hurt. Nobody gets hurt.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Fuck. I can't. Paul, you're hitting me with too much information here. An Instagram post listed 13 Republican politicians who criticized Biden's plan to cancel student debt, but took out Paycheck Protection Program loans that the government then forgave. Oh, at least 3 companies associated with Norman received Paycheck Protection Program loans. FM Hotel LLC received $170,000. GB Raquel received $165,000, and Catawba Hotel received a lot of stuff. I am a Republican robot.
I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. This is gonna be great.
I could really record some songs with that shit. I think, oh, the sounds. Like I guess I'm in a stadium. I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's a megaphone. It's a megaphone. I am a Republican robot.
Oh, that's that. Oh, okay. That's that.
Then this one annoys me. Like, it annoys the fuck out of me. I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot.
I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot.
I like the art. Oops.
I am a Republican robot. I am a Republican robot. I know. I should.
I should just stay on here all day. If I didn't want to take a nap at some point, I probably would. Sometimes soundboards can be fun. Don't abuse the privilege, though. It is fun, though, huh? It's good for comic relief. And then we have music, too, remember? Hold on, we have music. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, that was kind of annoying. Elon should use this when he's LARPing as that Ottman dude. Wait, what? Oh, Dittman dude. Wait, he's LARPing? I need reprogramming. That's for fuck's sake, sure. Subaru, Dutch, Miller of Charleston. Yeah, so they have like car dealerships. Listen, Paul, like the criming is just like, well, not criming, but just like fraud. He's so uncreative. I know. Yeah, I just didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know he had an alt. Does he have a sock? An Elmo sock? Crazy. Crazy. That man is going to destroy Twitter. Love the classified doc box. I know, right? Do you like it? Yeah, I just created it last time. And it always seems to come in handy as a reminder of something that is real in the midst of hearing things that may not be real, which we've heard a lot of them today from the Republicans. And a lot of bluster and a lot of like faux outrage, faux rage. Let's call it faux rage. So, yeah, I mean, I think to counter that, you always need just a little bit of like, oh, right, remember, this is happening right here. This is happening. Like, this is real. We don't know where some of this shit is. That's the point, okay? National security be damned, I guess, because we don't know where some of this shit is. Or who bought it. So, yeah, I think it's kind of insane, frankly. Did Virginia Fox have to poop? Is that what happened? Did that morning hazelnut with 2 creams and 5 sugars all of a sudden kick in, Virginia Fox? Is that what happened, sweetheart? I have 116 viewers! Kind of a big fucking deal. Yeah, it's kind of a big fucking deal. Like, this is a big fucking deal, okay? All of this shit over here that I've accumulated for us, like, it's just not even spread out. You can't even see, like, all the shit that's in this collage. Like, that's real, and we don't have that resolved at all, anywhere close, really. And we've got a compromised judge sitting in charge of it right now who's doing fuck all to get it resolved. So that's not justice. That's real. Kids not doing well because of all of the fucking challenges that they have to face and our underfunding of public education and our shiny object privatization through the charter networks, which I used to be a part of. Like for a few years, I ran a public charter school, and I now understand how damaging that system can be. My school was fantastic and operated like a public school. Lottery, random.
Committee will reconvene
Oops,
and
here
come
she
to
is.
order
She stopped
following a
pooping.
recess.
Got rid of
Ms.
that
Measure
hazelnut.
Fernandez,
You don't buy a
recognized for 5
hazelnut
minutes.
coffee. You just rent it. Am I right,
Madam
Virginia?
Chairwoman. And thank you so much, Secretary Cardona, for being here today.
Thank you.
For keeping the focus. I know it's been hard because of the manner in
McGonagall.
which the questions get asked, but
I
I
love
keep
her.
seeing you keeping the focus on the issue of education, because we know that education is both the foundation of our democracy as well as the path for prosperity for our families. Now, I wanted to give you the time to answer a bit about the question that came up earlier. You really weren't given the time, or the respect to be able to explain the authorities that you have under the Higher Education Act to forgive student loans. And that authority was given to the department through the Higher Education Act. Would you like to do a quick response to why you are acting in this with regarding student loans and the authority you're doing it under?
Well, we're looking very carefully at the authorities that I have under the Higher Education Act, an authority that was used by the last secretary as well. And the crisis that we're in with our higher education loan system and access to college, and we're using our authority carefully to make sure that
Paul,
we're
that's a very good
targeted
point.
decisions
Sorry,
to help
Secretary, to
students,
interrupt you, but
accomplish
yeah,
their
the
goals
security risk of
reaching
45th
college,
is colossal,
following
and the
up on
Speaker
what
of the House
in
getting
bipartisan fashion, what Congress
national
approved through the Public
security
Service Loan
briefings
Forgiveness
daily, and then visiting
Right. And I think it's really
fuckwad
important
at
that
Mara
Congress
Flarto
is
is
constantly
definitely
sort of
has to
assisting
be
different
criminal.
industries,
Oh my
assisting
God.
different corporations.
Can't stand
and
this.
The idea that we're going to be investing in our future workforce, in our children through education, is no different, right? And to say that Americans should not help with this endeavor is very short-sighted.
Right.
Because if we don't invest through education in our workforce, we do not have a future. So I am glad you are making those decisions. I wanted to touch on another topic, which we know that during the pandemic, it was hard on everybody. Our former president was doing a disastrous job of handling COVID. But then President Biden came in, and under a Democrat-led Congress, we passed multiple laws. We passed the American Rescue Plan, which gave schools a lot of flexibility on how to respond to these dire situations we found ourselves in. And schools used that flexibility. They used it to accelerate student learning, to address student mental health, to support educated workforce, because schools themselves—
I'd be interested in looking
there was a
at
philosophy
studies if there are any of schools that had successful kind of COVID,
I loved reading your
you know,
testimony that
resumption
you think that
plans,
bilingual,
or you know what I mean.
bilingual is a superpower.
I would be
agree.
interested to see
In
what
in
came
New
out of any
Mexico,
study
some
of that.
Those emergency relief funds were used for dual language teachers for certifications. I'm concerned about the different things that are going to happen as ESSER funds expire. How
Jen,
is your
that's why everything is so
department
slow, or not at all.
to
He's going to have
assist
someone
schools
publish all our
with
secrets
things
on
like
Rumble if
educator
they
professor-
cross
professor
his red
development,
line.
preparation
Jesus.
for dual language teachers.
Right.
How are we looking at the transition, and how does your budget address this issue of the transition and focusing on some of these needed areas?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and absolutely, bilingualism is a superpower, and I think what we need to do is make sure we're empowering our students to learn more languages so they can be prepared for global competitiveness. I really believe that strongly. Our budget does request additional dollars for, our OELA office that focuses on English language acquisition. It's important while maintaining your native language that you're learning English, so we have a request there for $50 million above last year, FY23 budget. We're continuing to support sustainability efforts, working with states. I was on the phone with the governor of New Mexico yesterday, talking about how to support, how the Department of Education could support New Mexico and ensuring that those strategies that we have seen worked. And I appreciate you mentioning the American Rescue Plan dollars. We've seen more growth in the 22-23 school year as a result of the use of those dollars than we've seen since 2009 for students in reading, mental health access. So the goal really is to make sure that we're continuing on those efforts that we know work. After-school programming, summer programming, mental health supports. We're working with states on how they can use existing funds.
Food security, housing
our annual
security.
budget does show we're increasing Title III dollars, Title I dollars to make sure that schools have the dollars that they need to be successful.
Right, and those Title I dollars are so important because if we want America to succeed, we need to make sure our working families and those families that are living in the highest areas of poverty have the support they need. Thank you very much for your work, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, in West Virginia, 5 female students were barred from competing in track and field after refusing to compete against a biological male. In Wisconsin, young girls were forced off their volleyball teams because they felt uncomfortable sharing a locker room with biological males. When the school district was asked about their transgender athlete policy, they said that they crafted it according to your Title IX interpretation. Mr. Secretary, what consequences will female students face if they do not want to share a locker room with a biological male under your Title IX rule?
Thank you.
They will have to dress in the hallway bathrooms.
Schools have the responsibility to make sure all students feel safe, including using the bathrooms. And as a lifelong educator, these are decisions that I've had to make as a school principal, as a district leader.
That's
well, I'm so glad that you brought up that you're concerned about the safety of students, but the Title IX rule and the guidance that you are putting out, that you've been putting out for 3 years.
Is there any issues? I don't think there's
taking away
issues,
the safety
actually.
of our daughters
No,
in
it's
their
not.
private spaces,
That's not true.
in their locker rooms and
It's not
showers,
true.
and taking
Stop
away their
victimizing
athletic and educational opportunities. Girls in Wisconsin and West
demonizing
Virginia refused, and they were
trans
kicked off their teams.
women
These schools
who are women.
basing their decisions on
You
your
fucking
rule.
turf.
This is happening because of you and Joe Biden.
fucking transphobe,
So,
bitch,
Mr. Secretary,
bigot.
in health education
Fuck
class, if a teacher says that men cannot become pregnant, and then a student goes to the Title IX coordinator
Men can
and says
become
he's
pregnant.
uncomfortable
Birthing
that the health teacher
persons-
insists men can't get pregnant, what
Men
should
can
the
get
Title
pregnant.
IX coordinator say?
Because
I'd be happy to refer
trans
that
men
question to the
are
Office
men.
for Civil Rights to provide guidance.
very
And
simple.
I can tell you
It's
that
not
in our
hard.
Title IX
very
rules
not
that we
hard.
recently put out, there's more guidance that goes along with it. I'd
Trans
welcome
women
an
are women.
opportunity for my team to work with your constituents
They
to
are
make sure that
birthing
the
persons.
implementation of Title IX.
But what I want to know is,
They
in
are able to
biology
give
class,
birth-
if the health teacher or the health class, if the teacher
Wait,
says
I'm sorry. I might be
that
making. I'm
men
sorry.
cannot
I'm
get
mixing it
pregnant
up.
and someone reports
Trans-
that to
sorry,
the
trans
Title
men
IX coordinator, what
are
should
men,
the Title IX
but are
coordinator say?
able
Because
to
you
give
are
birth
in charge.
Right.
as a
and-
birthing
and
person.
I'd be very happy to have your constituents get
your
support to
bigoted
make sure that their
logic
Title IX
is wrong.
coordinators have information. We've
Forgive me for not
provided
being graceful on
plethora of
that.
Technical assistance.
Yeah.
And we're gonna
How come no
continue
one
to
thinks?
support
Yeah. How
regardless
come
of
no?
you
How
say?
about the
Republicans or
trans
What would you say?
students being
Should
bullied
that teacher get in trouble?
for existing?
I don't want to comment on hypotheticals
about that?
without enough information, but
Let's
what
talk
I will
about
tell
the
you that I
suicide rates.
respect there are different opinions across the country.
Let's
and we're
talk about
committed
that.
To supporting schools.
So you respect a health teacher or a biology teacher saying that a biological male cannot get pregnant. You are recognizing biological sex, but in athletics, you are wiping out biological sex and going with gender identity. So I want to know, gender identity is not defined in your rule. Can you give me the
Gender is a
official definition
construct,
of
and
gender
it's
identity?
a nasty
So I
one.
think
at
the same thing you said is inaccurate. We have not released our,
Look at all the
Title
problems
IX
gender has
rules.
caused.
Those are
Actually,
I
you
really,
have for
I for
3 years,
one,
you've been putting out Title IX
am
guidance rules.
very
I
embracing
brought them
of
with,
a gender
as you can see, and it does have to do
neutral
with athletic
society,
teams. So moving on, could you please
to the degree
tell me
that
what
allows
the
anyone to
official
identify
definition of
however they
gender
would
identity
like
is?
and to
We're in the,
express themselves
rulemaking process for
however
athletics.
they would
As you
like.
know, that was submitted maybe 9 months after
Really?
the proposed
It's
rule
not
for Title
hard.
IX.
It's
so
not
we're in
hard.
the process of listening to
Hard.
140,000
And I understand
comments,
what she's doing.
which have
The
different-
I
schools are
understand
being
she's
threatened to
acting
have
for the
their federal
camera. She's
funding pulled
acting for her base or whatever it is,
because they're
or what
afraid
she
of the
thinks her base is.
consequences, the
Has she ever
real-world
really asked her
consequences
base about
of
this
your Title
issue?
IX rule and
Has
your
she had
guidance
town
that you have put
halls
out.
about
I
it?
do want to know, what would you say to a
Would she
female
be interested
athlete
in
who would
disclosing
have
her
won a gold medal,
communications so that
but
we
it
could
was
tell,
now
like,
is
exactly
getting a
how many
silver medal because a
calls she might
biological
get
male
on
took
this
it?
particular
As I
issue
said,
from her
Congresswoman, our athletics rules have
base?
not been finalized, and I'd be happy to work with.
Or does
whomever
she
you want our
represent
team to
all
work
people
with
in her
to
district?
help
Well, I do
understand
have to
Title
say,
IX
No,
you
she
are
doesn't.
not protecting
She
everyone.
only
I'm
represents
here to protect
the
girls
bigoted
and to
people
stand up for families and parents
who
across the
are
country that are outraged
afraid
over this.
of
You are
people
not protecting girls. You are
who are
making a choice.
different
You're choosing boys
by the
over
mere
girls.
fact that they're
You are
different.
satisfied with letting the girl
Nope.
take the silver medal while the boy,
Are you kidding me
biological
right
boy,
now?
takes the gold.
Is that
You are going to be
happening?
remembered
Like, is that
as the
like a
education
problem?
secretary under Joe Biden.
Is that like a
who
real
erased
issue?
girls' sports for an entire generation. You should
Is that
withdraw
really
your
it?
Title IX rule
It's
or
stupid.
resign.
It's bigoted
Thank you, and I
bullshit.
yield back to Dr. Fox.
It's bigoted, bigoted, bigoted,
Thank you,
bigoted
Ms. Miller.
bullshit.
Ms. Wild.
Period.
You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Period.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Secretary Cardona. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our committee today. I wasn't here for the entire hearing because I had another hearing across the hall as things work out in Congress, but I have been briefed on the earlier testimony. I know that you've been asked an awful lot of questions about FAFSA, and so I'm going to be limited on that and get to another issue that I think is really important. But I will say, and I know you've heard this from everybody, the number of concerned parents, as well as the institutions of higher learning in my district that I've heard from has been overwhelming. But I'm sure your job has been quite overwhelming this year, given everything that's going on. On the FAFSA issue, I don't want to repeat things that have already been asked and answered, but I have heard from some institutions that about 30% of the initial institutional student information records, otherwise known as ISIRs, and for the benefit of those who may not know, that's something produced by the FAFSA system that includes data about a student's financial aid eligibility, right?
Yes.
So I've heard that about 30% sent to the colleges have errors and need to be corrected. Might be higher, that number might be higher for institutions that serve low-income and first-gen students. Has the department determined how it will handle instances where institutions award students higher amounts of federal aid due to incorrect ISIRs?
Yeah, we've corrected that issue. Thank you for that. We've corrected that issue. There were several issues in programming. There was an issue with information for tax data information that we've also worked to correct. We're communicating daily with schools, and you know, they've been bending over backwards, and the financial aid directors, the college presidents have been extremely communicative in terms of sharing what concerns they have and helping us determine what the best support strategies are. And I just want to commend them publicly and thank them for their patience and flexibility to meet the needs of students. We have communicated with colleges directly, spoken over 100 college presidents myself to make sure that we're hearing what their concerns are and how we can address those. And through daily communication, we've been updating information on, you know, what their challenges are and how we can address them.
So are some colleges or institutions of higher learning being required, are they having to claw back some of the financial aid that they had offered to a student?
No. We have communicated with them that the information that they were given could be used. Many schools asked us to just reprocess it, and we've done the reprocessing for schools to have the updated information.
Okay. So I want to shift gears to another really critical topic, mental health. Secretary, according to a 2022 study by the National Center for Education Statistics, only 13% of public schools strongly agreed and 43% moderately agreed that they could effectively provide mental health services to all students in need. That data deeply concerns me. It indicates a significant gap in providing essential support to our students' emotional well-being. Can you discuss your department's initiatives in addressing mental health issues in our schools, particularly in light of the $1 billion allocated to the Stronger Connections grant program?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging the importance of mental health supports for our students. You know, our Surgeon General rightly, communicated that we're in a youth mental health crisis, and access to mental health supports is critically important for our students. We know students are 6 times more likely to access mental health supports if they're provided in our schools, which is why we are big proponents and supporters and ask for an increase of $200 million for full-service community schools that connect with community partners to provide mental health support. The BISCA dollars, Bipartisan Safer Community Act dollars, have been used to increase the number of school social workers by 40%, the number of school nurses by 30%.
At what levels? Are we talking K to 12?
K to 12,
Okay.
yes. And so they have provided access. We are also working to improve Medicaid reimbursement for sustainable dollars. So as the BISCA dollars sunset, there's sustainable reimbursement dollars from Medicaid. So we're working with HHS. We have currently 13 states that have signed on to do that, and we're working aggressively to get as many other states signed up to get Medicaid reimbursement. So the goal is never to go back to a system where we had an emergency room model of mental health in our schools. Unfortunately, we often wait until the trauma happens to provide support. What we're seeing these dollars be used for are proactive strategies to support students.
Thank you very much. With that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wild. Ms. Steele, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Fox, and thank you, Secretary Cardona. You are appearing us today. And, I am just most concerned about foreign influence on our universities. So when it comes to foreign influence on our universities, we know that departments' disclosures are just the tip of iceberg when it comes to the billions of foreign funds schools don't submit. More importantly, submissions are useless if your department does not take enforcement seriously, because in fact, 117, Section 117, and China aren't mentioned in single time in your 10-page written testimony today. And if I'm wrong, please let me know. But your department maintains a list of open Section 117 investigations, but every single one has opened by under Trump administration. If you added more, or what I found was you closed only 5 universities. So, how many we are under the investigation and how many added and how many it's not, because it seems like we don't have clear communications between department and us. So since taking the office, why have you not launched a single Section 117 investigation? And do you believe that universities should view relationship with dangerous countries like China and other countries of concern that does exact same as our allies? Or do you think certain countries of concern with the national security threats warrant increased scrutiny? Should those relationships be treated differently?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman Steele. I can assure you that I agree with you. We should not allow foreign influence in our schools, and we make sure we protect our schools and our students from foreign influence. To that end, the Department of Education takes very seriously the responsibility to provide public information on gifts from other countries. And I want to make sure I correct that. We've provided almost 39,000 foreign gifts totaling over $21 billion in the last 3 years, which is much more than the last administration. We are a part of the FBI's National Counterintelligence Task Force, where they provide, we share information, and if there is a need for investigations, that task force is the one that does it. We believe that by having transparency not only to that task force but to the public, we can communicate where foreign gifts are coming from, and the law enforcement arms are best suited to investigate.
So I hope that we have much better communication to our committee and your department, so we understand exactly what kind of tangible steps that you are taking in your department. Because when we see the report and it's not there, then we don't know that what you are doing and what kind of tangible steps that you are taking. And just one more thing that I want to just ask charter schools, because you remember last year you came out and you support charter schools. So a 2023 study from Stanford Center for Research on Education Outcomes found that in math, charter school students on average learned the equivalent of an additional 6 days per year, and in reading added 16 days of learning. Chairwoman, I want to submit this on the record, that this publication.
Without objection.
There's probably
Students
some
in
context
poverty achieve an
in
additional
this.
23 days of
So-
learning in reading and 17 days in math. However, the Biden administration proposed $40 million cut to the federal charter school program. Why such excellent result for at-risk students that the administration would like cut? Because we have to add, and we have to add more charter schools.
I can answer that.
Thank you for the question. I agree with you that parents should have options for their children, and charter schools are a viable option.
Thank you for agreeing with us.
Yeah. You know, and I have to be very frank. You know, the Fiscal Responsibility Act is something we take very seriously. We had to look for where we can provide cuts in our budget proposals that wouldn't impact students. There were several. We cut comprehensive centers by 9%. The innovation and research grants, we cut that by 5%. And while the charter school grant was cut, the proposal was cut, I can assure you that it wouldn't impact any of those who are currently under the grant. The demand for that has decreased. I'd be happy to have my team share more information about that, but it is still the largest K-12 competitive grant that we oversee at the Department of Education. So I think that's testimony to the fact that we do support charter schools as an option for families who choose it.
So there's no impact on charter schools?
No.
A $40 million cut is a lot for the charter schools.
What we've had to do, and again, speaking about the lack of demand, what we've had to do is using the grants, front load dollars. It wouldn't affect any of the CSP awards for years.
Thank you. My time is up. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. Ms. Wilson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Secretary Cardona, thank you so much for joining us today. I just loved your visit to my elementary school, and I want you to come back again. I want to express my gratitude for the Biden-Harris administration's dedication to our students. Our former Secretary of Education has stated her goal was to eliminate schools. That's what you call insanity on steroids. The Biden-Harris administration want to be somebody's students in their effort to secure the promise of higher education. And I thank you, Secretary, for your work on that issue. No other president has tackled this debacle that cripples so many. No other president. That is why I have proposed the Loan Act that would build on this administration's effort to cancel student loans. Secretary Cardona, last September, you and Secretary Vilsack sent a joint letter to multiple governors, including Florida, urging investment in HBCUs. As you know, President Biden has repeatedly called on raising teacher pay. And during this Teacher Appreciation Week, I would hope the Department of Education reaffirms its commitment to our teachers.
BRB.
I want to also thank the department for its recent Title IX changes that combat sexual harassment and discrimination. It's crucial that we affirm our commitment to safeguarding the LGBTQI+ community and combating sexual misconduct on college campuses, and I thank you for that. One thing of concern to me is the recent FAFSA rollout that has disrupted educational opportunities for thousands of students. But I know together this administration, with your help, will work to deliver for our students to ensure we deliver a high-quality education across these United States. My question is, are there any updates or information you want to share with this committee that we have not addressed? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And, you know, let me just start off by saying We are working around the clock to get more students to fill out our FAFSA. The delays created frustrations and to the families and students who had to deal with that. I recognize how difficult that was. I myself have a senior in high school, and they should be thinking about college and all that, and not the delays. I'm proud to say, though, we've processed over 9 million applications. The gap between last year and this year is decreasing significantly, and we have a nationwide strategy now, working with our principals, our superintendents. If students go to studentaid.gov right now and fill out FAFSA, it should be a 15 to 20-minute process. If their contributors fill it out, by Friday, the schools will have their information. So it's up and running, and now we've allotted
I guess there was a
$50 million
problem with
to
FAFSA.
assist
I didn't
with
realize
the
that.
implementation, meaning having people
That
help
blows,
students
'cause
get it done.
FAFSA is
This
already
important
difficult
to us.
enough.
I know as a first-generation college student how important it is to make sure you have access to FAFSA. So that is our priority. And thank you for acknowledging Teacher Appreciation Week. We believe strongly that the shortage that we have in our country is a symptom of a teacher respect issue. And I'm really proud that President Biden and Dr. Biden elevated it to a state dinner for National Teachers of the Year, but it really sends the message that we need to provide agency, better working conditions, and competitive salary to our educators. We are strong believers that we need to defend public education, not defund it. And doing that includes supporting our educators who give their best for our children. Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Kiley, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. A few days ago, you wrote a letter to universities condemning the rise in anti-Semitism on campuses, and you specifically spoke about incidents of students being physically assaulted, subjected to virulently anti-Semitic statements, being subjected to verbal abuse, finding swastikas on their dorm room doors. You said that these and other incidents are abhorrent, period. They have no place on college campuses. I'm glad that you wrote that letter. You recognized the platform that you have to try to influence
Why don't I believe
behavior,
anything he's
for
saying?
the better on our university campuses. However, there was a lot of
I
things
don't
going
believe
on
he
there that your letter
sincerely
left unaddressed. So I wanted
is
to
so
take a moment to
worried.
ask you about a few.
I'm
of them.
sorry.
For example, we've seen at a number of campuses, such as UC San Diego and UCLA,
He's gonna need to
protesters
give
who
a
have
little more.
blocked physically Jewish students from entering campus or entering
Well, were you
spaces
there
on campus.
last
Do you
week
condemn that
also?
behavior?
There's a lot of violence.
Thank you for the question. And let me just start off by saying hate has no place in our schools.
I understand, and I thank you for that. Can you please address the specific question? Do you condemn those who are physically blocking Jewish students from entering their campuses?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's a very
It's not
important
hard,
message.
okay?
How
You're
about
an
the
idiot.
encampments
Come on,
themselves?
dude.
These protesters who have set up tents on campus and are refusing to leave in violation of university rules and often the law. Do you condemn that?
I condemn behaviors that are unsafe, and I leave it to the university leaders and their board of governors to address how they handle encampments or or other issues that are happening on campus. What I will say, but if I can finish, please. What I will say is acts of intimidation or violence toward Jewish students, or any students for that matter, are not tolerated. That's not, as the president said, that's not protesting. That's creating a
I appreciate
harassment
that,
on
and that's an
campus.
important message. But the encampments themselves, when they violate university policies and the law, do you condemn them?
The university has a responsibility to follow, to uphold their
Protesting
rules
is
on
a
campus,
very
and,
deep history
So
in
can you
this
tell me right
country,
now, yes or
and
no,
is
if
a
you condemn these
driver of
encampments?
social change and
Again,
political
those are decisions
change
for the
and
universities to make. I know that in some
conventional
cases,
wisdom.
the
It just pushes
universities
all
are
kinds of
engaging in dialogue
things.
with students to come up with
And
a
do you
strategy.
want everyone to be
I don't want
safe?
to get into the details of cases that I don't have all the
Sure, but you
examples.
just wrote a
Both,
letter to university leaders
that
in which
is
you
what
called
is
out
great
things
about
that you
this
think that
country
they
is people
ought to do, and so I'm asking, is this one
who
of them? Let
believe
me put it
different
this way.
things
For
can
students
protest.
or whoever they might be who are in these encampments, who have been told to leave, who have been told to disperse and move along, and are refusing, what is your message to them?
You know, for me, it's really important to think about this from the perspective of giving the universities the opportunity to
Have a
engage,
good
but keeping
day.
students safe. I think about those students who should be thinking about graduation, and we want to make sure that all students have access to their classes.
Okay, but for
and
students who have been
graduation.
told to leave or other protesters in encampments and are refusing to do so, what is your message to them? Will you tell them as the Secretary of
Good night,
Education that they need
Congress.
to leave when they've been told to do
Good
so?
night, lounge chat.
Students, all students, whether they have encampments or not, have to follow the rules of the school and make sure that they're not engaging in behaviors that are unsafe.
So students or
discriminatory.
others who are in encampments and have been given orders to leave, they should leave, yes?
If the university directs them to leave, they should leave.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We've also seen examples of faculty who have said, for example, at University of Chicago, that they are willing to be arrested with the students who refuse to leave the encampment. Do you condemn those faculty members who are standing in the way?
Trying to be like a Matt
the rules
Gates
being enforced?
wannabe. Is he like a Matt Gates
My
replacement
responsibility under Title
or
VI
something?
is to make sure that students are not being
He's like a bad
But do you
version, like a
condemn faculty members
Walmart
who are
Matt Gates,
interfering
and that's
with
pretty
university
low
or law
because
enforcement efforts
Matt
to clear
already
encampments,
started
yes or
at
no?
I
Kmart.
believe university officials should adhere to the rules in their university.
So that's a
and
yes. You condemn faculty
Oh
members
my
who are
God.
interfering with efforts to clear
Oh.
encampments.
What?
I support university officials following the rules of their university.
He wants people to be
How about
safe.
some of these universities that are negotiating changes in university policy towards Israel is as a demand of those who are in the encampments? Do you think that's appropriate?
My responsibility under Title VI is to enforce with the Office for Civil Rights violations of Title VI. And
No,
our
Mr.
letter-
Secretary, you've been very outspoken on a number of issues. So I'm asking you your view. Do you think that's appropriate for universities to cede to demands of those in encampments and actually change policies towards Israel in response?
I think it's my responsibility to be very clear that we will not condemn.
I don't think he controls boards of trustees of universities.
We've
That-
seen some
that I don't
universities
think
talk
he
about
does.
ending study abroad programs to Israel. Do you think that's appropriate?
Our Title VI regulations make it very clear, and if you go to our website at .gov, there's a supporting safer
Okay, I'm not
campuses.
asking about your website. How about demands to cut ties with Hillel? Do you condemn those demands to cut ties with Hillel at universities?
There's guidance there for universities where a lot of the questions that you're asking makes it very clear.
Okay, but your letter said that certain things are abhorrent on campus. Would you say that's one of them? Calls for universities to cut ties with Hillel. Is that abhorrent? Use your word.
Stop it.
Violence
Stop
towards
it.
students,
This is not
anti-Semitism
governance.
on campus, which
This
we've
is
seen.
not
Secretary, you're not
governance. This is
willing to condemn
grandstanding.
Calls to cut ties with Hillel? Will you condemn that? Yes or no?
We are responsible for adhering to Title VI and enforcing it, and your support of our budget would help us get to that level. Instead of creating division, as I said at the beginning of my call, it'd
I
be
yield
helpful
back.
for us to
Thank you,
work
Mr.
together.
Kiley.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
He won.
Ms.
He
Manning,
won.
You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. Mr. Secretary, I have just returned from a Holocaust memorial ceremony in the Capitol that seemed all too relevant today, because we were reminded that the Holocaust did not start with the death camps. It started with Jews being demonized, harassed, dehumanized, blamed for evils they did not commit. And over the last few months, I have met with Jewish students on college campuses who are being demonized, harassed, dehumanized, blamed for evils they did not commit. And I have visited Columbia University, and I've seen signs that can only be interpreted as calling for the elimination of the State of Israel and genocide against Jewish people around the globe. I am pleased that you have put out the letter that you put out today. It's detailed. It contains real-world examples of the kinds of things that can be considered worthy of an investigation by the Office of Civil Rights. And I appreciate the detailed examples because we need more reasons for schools to do their job and keep Jewish students safe and make sure that we stop the anti-Semitism that is happening on college campuses. So what I am interested in today is finding out what more you can do from your position to stop the anti-Semitism that has exploded on our college campuses. Yeah. If you were given the funding that you need, could you enforce more of the Title VI requirements and help schools and administrators understand what their obligations are?
Absolutely. We could not only, you mentioned the Dear Colleague letter that we submitted today. There was a letter from myself to College Presidents Friday with examples, but by investigating, closing out investigations, which the funding that we're asking for will help us to do, we can create case studies or lessons learned from examples of cases closed that are happening today. And so we strongly encourage support of the budget.
As you know, the Department of Education plays a major role in the U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. President Biden is the first U.S. president ever to issue a national strategy. I have introduced a bipartisan, bicameral bill that would codify the national strategy, and it would designate a senior official at the Department of Education to serve as your primary advisor on countering anti-Semitic discrimination in higher education. Among other duties, this official would proactively visit institutions to remind students of their rights and administrators of their responsibilities. How would having this senior official help you in your obligation to combat anti-Semitism?
Thank you. Any resources that we can get to have human capital to close out cases.
But specifically, a senior official whose job it was to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, would that be helpful to you?
But yeah, but
Yes,
wouldn't you want that for different types of? I mean, isn't that for?
Colleges,
I mean, not. I'm
students
not.
and families, and addressing anti-Semitism.
I know there are some
So I understand that
unique
you have
to
deployed
each
personnel to
segment
several
of
schools that are currently
discrimination.
facing
There are
protests.
unique.
Which schools are
That
the
just
department's
speaks to the
employees
need to
visiting,
have
and
more
how are they
of the
working with school
OCR
administrators to restore calm and
to
protect Jewish
assist
students?
Thank you.
campuses
We have many open
in.
investigations, and we have staff
Yeah.
and schools. I can have a more detailed list sent to you. We are communicating regularly with
I
schools.
don't think this
and,
has to be a choice.
Not only through the investigations, but also engaging with them around how to use the materials that we're providing to prevent anti-Semitism on campus.
You testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee that schools in violation of Title VI, which protects students from anti-Semitism, will have their federal funding revoked. That is a serious position to take. Where do
Primarily to
institutions
test
cross the
religion
line
and
into
racism and
violating Title VI?
all
And
of it.
are you prepared to
And
enforce
it's,
the law
you know,
against
I-
institutions that cross that line?
You
I
advocate
am.
for what you advocate
It is
for.
the last step. The goal
And I
is
don't
to change
begrudge anyone
behaviors and
doing
make
that.
campus safe
think
for all
it's time
students and
that
address the underlying issues that led to
we
the
come
report.
together.
If a school openly refuses
I think there's more
to
of us
adhere
that
to
believe
Title
in that
VI,
than there are of people that are going to force
revoking
someone to
funds
choose.
is something that I can do and I would do.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
There's got to be more of
Thank
us.
you, Ms. Manning.
that
Mr. Bean,
want
you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good
genocide
morning
to
to you. Good
end
morning,
and
committee. And Mr.
ethnic
Secretary, welcome
cleansing
back.
and
It is great to
apartheid
see you.
and
You, Mr.
discrimination
Secretary,
and
have a very
anti-Semitism.
impressive
I want
resume.
all of it
You've
to
been
end.
a teacher in Connecticut. You've been an administrator. You were a principal. Would you agree that one of the hardest parts of being an educator is the planning, the logistics of how many kids you have, how many little resources you have to make that out? Is planning a really tough part of being an educator?
Planning is an important part of being an educator.
Very good. So you would agree then when I hear from school districts of how hard it's been, the massive influx of illegal immigrants into our school system, you would agree that that's real. That's real, that they're having a hard time managing all these influx of students that they didn't know were coming.
Planning for new students as a school principal was something that we had to take into account.
So it's a curveball. Do we know how many illegal immigrants are in our school systems right now?
I can have my staff reach out to you about that information. I don't have it off the top of my head.
So, but do you have any idea? Is it in the millions? Is it in the 100,000s? Do you have a general idea? And here's the thing. I should know the answer. I don't know. I've gone online to try to find the answer. I don't know the answer. But I would assume the Department of Education, you would know, but you don't know how many are here.
I'd be happy to have my team follow up with you on specifics.
No, I'm sincere when I say I'd like to know. Good. Does there come a number, though? Is there a number in the future that you would say, we just can't take any more? Is there a number that you would agree that we just can't take any more? It's causing our numbers, teaching our kids to suffer when we just can't logistically plan for the future. Is there a number that you would say enough is enough?
So it is the
There's not a
Stop
number.
being so fucking
the responsibility of educators as a school principal. I can tell you.
Oh, you take everybody. I'm with you, and I
Stop
understand
being
that's
so
the law.
fucking
Anybody
racist
that comes, you
and
take them. But
xenophobic
is there a
and
time you're
fucking
going to say
dehumanizing
enough?
and
We
take
got to call
care
time
of
out.
the
You would
people
tell
that come?
Joe Biden time out.
Fuck.
We're stressed.
as educators, it's really important that we meet the
You
needs
know
of our
what?
So there's no
Oh my
number, and I
God.
was hoping
Stop
you'd tell
it.
me there's a number so
Fuck
I
you,
can say help
dude.
is on the
Fuck
way,
you,
or there,
you
we'll hit that
fucking
max, but
piece
there
of
is
shit
no end in
maggot.
sight. We're all on our own. Are
Fucking
you aware how
asshole.
many schools have been either shut down or partially taken over to house illegal immigrants?
I'm aware of
that is just so fucking urban mythology
How many?
bullshit.
Do you know how many?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
It's a bunch, and one would be
It's
too
a
many for
bunch.
those students that
Hello,
have
everybody.
to do that. So that's
It's
something
a
to be aware of.
bunch.
That's when I hear our educators. We have a lot of struggles with numbers right now. I chair the subcommittee on
It's a
K
bunch.
through 12, and our numbers since COVID have plummeted. And so we've got work to do, Mr. Secretary, and this is something that that hopefully they won't have to do it. I want to congratulate you because you've done something. You have united Republicans and Democrats, House members and senators on coming together to say that the Department of Education doesn't have the authority to give money that's not theirs away in the terms of student loans. Are you aware that even the Supreme Court has come out and said this is outside of your authority? Are you aware of that? The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, has said, Department of Education, this is not your purview. It's not your money. This belongs in Congress. Are you aware of that, Mr. Secretary?
The decision of the Supreme Court was the HEROES Act. I'm acting under the Higher Education.
So you're interpreting it different. You're saying that you trump Congress and you trump the courts. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Secretary?
That is not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what it appears, and that's why
Well,
people
that's
are
what
struggling
I want
with
to call it, because
People
it's
will
in
think
my
it's
notes.
arbitrary, but yet
There.
you've picked winners and losers of who you allow to forgive the money that's not ours. It's the taxpayers. It's not forgiven. It comes back to us. But first of all, are you aware that a lot of times, and I've been in hearings, and I was a banker and made loans. A lot of student loans don't actually
He was an
go
insurance
to
agent.
fund education. They're
Don't-
where the
don't-
students have
don't
rolled in
believe him.
credit card debt or taken trips or bought cars. Are you aware that it's not all actually going to education? Are you aware of that?
The work that we're doing with public service loan forgiveness and borrower defense.
You may not be aware, so I'll tell you. I've been to hearings, and the way they do it, they combine debt. But you
What?
have,
What?
you
Whoa,
have picked winners and losers, because for those students that have chosen a religious-based school or a private school, you've not forgiven their loans.
What?
Is this your way of declaring war on those that pick a religious school or a private school?
Absolutely not. We're working for the working class folks who need a break. Instead of tax breaks to millionaires, we're trying to focus on helping those
So no
who are trying to
private
get
school.
an education and not be in a lifetime of
private.
debt, sir.
I want to
private-
make you aware of
private
so many
religious
things
school.
out there. Thank you
I
very
want
much,
to make you
Madam Chair. I yield
aware of
back.
so many
Mr.
things.
Bean, Ms. Omar, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
It's good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you so much for joining us. I got a little jealous about everybody thanking you for coming to their district, so we should soon see you in CD5. I wanted to talk a little bit about the rise in targeting and harassment of students on campus that are protesting against the genocide that's taking place in Gaza, including Jewish students, Black, Brown, Arab, and Muslim students. Emotions and fears are running high as students of all backgrounds say they are fearful of escalations of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and bigotry. My office has received countless stories from Jewish students, Arab students, Muslim students who have been targeted, harassed, and alienated on campus just because they are standing against the genocide that's happening in Gaza. I know that you've been meeting with students, parents, and leaders. Is there something that you can share with us about the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on college campuses?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. You know, when I hear from students and families directly, they're scared. They're scared. You know, safety on campus is something that they don't feel like they should compromise or, you know, we strongly condemn any acts of violence or discrimination on campus. We've been very clear about that. But what I'm hearing from families is, you know, that they're scared, that children are having to hide symbols of their faith on their way to class so that they're not targeted. That to me is, you know, as a father and as an educator, something that I stand against.
I know that the administration has condemned a lot of speech on campus. What I have not heard be condemned is statements like kill all Muslims, kill all Arabs, level Gaza. Do you condemn those kind of comments?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Will you give your commitment to this committee and the American people that the department will investigate complaints of Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim discrimination?
Yes.
Thank you. What additional support could Congress provide for you to be able to ensure robust oversight and investigation and accountability is carried out?
No, thank you for that. We're asking for a $22 million increase in our budget. We were flat funded last year. In 2009, we had 58 more investigators and a third of the cases that we have today.
That's insane.
In 2019, there were 10,000 cases a year.
That's a problem.
2021, 22, there were 19,000. The increase is extremely high. We need additional investigators to close out these cases and make sure we're providing support to our students.
Do you have an idea of the number of cases that are pending at the moment?
We have 145 cases on shared ancestry open.
On college campuses?
On college campuses, yeah.
I want to pivot. Last time you were here, I asked you about the Mohela frustration that a lot of borrowers were experiencing, feeling like their rights were being violated. We talked about how concerned I was about renewing their contract. I know that the department has done some work in taking some of the cases off. It seems like that you all are going through some processing pauses as the transition happens. How are you ensuring that the borrowers do not have an interruption as the transition and the pause continue?
Sure, thank you for that. And let me just go back to, we have 145 open cases, 100 cases since October 7th, and they may include K-12, but 100 cases since, and I believe those are college. I can get that information to you. We are transitioning some cases, as Mohela requested, to other servicers. We're communicating with borrowers to try to minimize disruption for public service loan forgiveness.
Okay. And I'm wondering how the department is planning to make sure those that remain with Mohela are able to receive a better service.
Well, look, I think part of fixing the broken higher education system is making sure that we're looking at it from the perspective of the consumer. We need to improve student borrower services, really. And part of that, a lot of the work that we're doing at FSA and just contracting is to improve services. We're also holding folks accountable, all servicers. And there have been payments that we've withheld because the services weren't great to our borrowers. So we are holding them more accountable, and we're providing more resources. And as you mentioned with Mohela, we're moving some cases over at their request to make the process smoother for our borrowers.
Wonderful. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Why don't we cap CEO pay
Mr. Burleson, you're
for everybody?
recognized for
Can we
5
start there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, since coming to Congress, I have been really, when people ask me what are your thoughts, one of the things that I've
executive
taken
pay.
away from this place and try to convey back home is a shocking amount of espionage and activity from foreign adversaries into the United States. And some of those briefings that we've had included here in the Education Committee, particularly when it comes to China and their involvement and their form of elite capture that occurs. And so my question has to do with Section 117 of the Higher Education Act that mandates that the universities and colleges must report twice each year to the Secretary whenever they receive foreign monetary or non-monetary gifts in excess of $250,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In October of 2020, the Department of Education under the Trump administration conducted a study, and they issued a report entitled Institutional Compliance with Section 117 of the Higher Education Act of 1965. This is the copy of the study. I'm sure that you reviewed that study before.
I've been briefed, yes.
Yes. Madam Chair, I'd like to enter this into the record if that's possible.
Without objection.
Thank you. So in this study, they document
She loves her a
shocking
Trump
number of
admin
universities and
report.
colleges that
There's
were out
nothing
of
like 'em.
compliance with Section 117. Do you have any comments regarding that?
Yeah, thank you. I share your concern. I'm a big believer that we have to stop any foreign influence in our schools. We're committed to that, and we're committed to working with you to make sure that we communicate what we're doing on that. I can tell you that the Department of Education has taken it seriously. We provided foreign gifts reports of over almost 39,000 foreign gifts that were given to universities, over $21 billion. So this is something that we communicate openly. We believe in the transparency. Additionally, sir, we're part of the FBI's National Counterintelligence Task Force to make sure that our agency is working with law enforcement, investigative arm, to make sure that not only are we transparent about the information and clear which universities are getting which gifts from which countries, but that the arm that does the investigations has the information. We take it very seriously, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Have you followed up on this report and the information with an updated report? Particularly what I'm interested in is how many universities are in compliance today versus were in compliance in 2020.
Mm-hmm. I can have that information looked into and sent to you, sir.
Okay. If you haven't done a report, would you agree that you'd be willing to do a follow-up report on that?
I'd be happy to have some follow-up with you on the questions that you have.
Because I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm actually asking a legitimate question, because I would think, based on what came out of this report, that you would genuinely want to know where the universities stand and how many of them are in compliance with Section 117.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in making sure foreign influence is out of our schools, which is why we've reported more gifts than the previous administration. We're going to continue to work with the FBI's National Counterintelligence Task Force on investigation.
Burn!
And then with my limited time, I want to go into an extension of this, which has to do with, I think what we're seeing is
I think we should cap wealth. I'm sorry.
Anti-Semitism on our
That's it,
college
I said it.
campuses.
I
There's been
meant
some
it.
connections made to groups like Students for Justice in Palestine and other groups. Are you investigating any foreign involvement or connections between foreign entities
the influx of government. This is a really good one, Jen. The influx of criminals in our government is real.
Investigations. Many of them are
and not fully
shared
addressed.
ancestry. What I can tell you is when we initiate an investigation, information
Send
comes
in the
out during the
supersedis.
investigation that
Where's
might
those
move the
superseding
investigation
indictments?
or broaden it. So while I can't comment specifically on your question, I can tell you that that's within the scope of information.
Guess
that
what
we
I
receive from
have
schools,
for
and if
after
that
the
is part of our,
broadcast?
investigation request, then it's something that would be investigated.
My
These
favorite.
groups, they can receive the money, but only
Simply
directly through the universities. Is that
Cheetos.
correct? Or
These
can they
are
receive
my
money directly from the outside?
favorite. I'm so
have my team follow up with you
excited.
on, that information.
They're
Okay,
just sitting
that would
there
be good to
staring
know.
at me.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Burleson. Mr. Scott, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
All my nails are falling off.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, you've heard a lot about the FAFSA, and we expect you to get that back on track as quickly as possible. You've also heard a lot about the student debt problem and whether or not the taxpayer ought to be paying for the loan forgiveness. Whether people who are not students should be paying for the loan forgiveness. Did you hear the Republicans complain about
I'm not a
the,
small
Trump
business
tax
owner,
cut,
so why did I
where
pay for the
80% of the
PPP
benefits
loan
went to the top
forgiveness? I didn't
1%?
take a
Did you hear
PPP
them
loan.
complain that the 99% had actually paid for that? Or did you hear them complain about the PPP loans? People who don't own a business had to pay for the forgiveness of those PPP loans. Do you hear any complaints about that?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, now, how many colleges and universities are there in the United States?
There's well over 5,000, sir.
And on how many campuses are there active encampments or protests at this point?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it's a small number, sir.
About 30 or 40, about 1%, 50 maybe? About
That's about
1%. And on those campuses, how many students are actually participating in the protest?
Well, it depends on campus, but I would say probably a smaller percentage.
Small group. Okay. Now, you've been asked how to intervene on how the campus should be handling these. without much information, and it varies from case to case. If a student had a protest on better food in the cafeteria, would you be expected to intervene and tell the college how to deal with that?
I would likely not, sir.
You indicated that all students have a right to be safe on campus. That means they all have the right to be protected under Title VI and Title IX. That means free from anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia, homophobia, racism, Asian hate, gender identity. And did I hear you say that there were about 140 some cases of, what'd you say, shared heritage?
Yeah, shared ancestry, 145.
And that would include all of the anti-Semitism cases.
Correct.
And how many open cases do you have on everything else?
We have 145 under shared ancestry. I can have that information provided for you to have more accurate numbers. I don't have that in front of me.
But the number of open cases is over 10,000, isn't it?
The number of cases that we get a year is probably closer to 19,000.
Okay. Under the implementation of Every Student Succeeds Act, that implementation was disrupted by the pandemic. It had about three major provisions. One is that you have to ascertain whether or not there are achievement gaps and have credible strategy to do something about it, and resource equity. How are we getting back on track to implement the provisions of Every Student Succeeds Act?
Thank you, Ranking Member. We take very seriously the accountability that assures that our students are making gains. Academically, we've been paying attention to not only NAEP data, but statewide data.
I'm having like a
tells us that
PTSD type response to the mention of school data.
Learning loss in math, a quarter in reading.
I have
and
so
that the
much to say
gains
on that topic.
Have been 2 times as high
So much.
in math than in typical years, and in reading 5 times as much growth. So we're seeing growth based on the implementation of the dollars. However, it's important that we continue to use the assessment data that is provided by states, that our Office of Elementary and Secondary Education have regular conversations and meetings with states to monitor growth and subgroup information in terms of students that are achieving.
Now, some of that growth because we had significant funding under Title I in the American Rescue Plan Act?
Sir, I would say as a teacher and principal, it was because of the additional funding and the great use by our educators in the field.
I just have, I guess, I have several other questions I'll submit, but can you say a word about after-school program funding?
They're critical, and we have to do better as a country. In our grant, in our proposal, we have funding for after-school programs to reduce summer slide. We have to do better. We can't go back to where
that's
we
right.
were.
CPAC is happening, isn't it? Damn butterflies. I don't want to watch that.
You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Secretary Cardona, we spoke last year, and I want to follow up with some of what we talked about last year, but let me start with just making sure that those in my East Texas district are aware of this new Title IX rule that's being proposed by the Biden administration. On April 29th, 2024, this new regulation was published, and this final rule dramatically, in my opinion, changes the existing Title IX regulations. It weakens protections for women and girls and dilutes due process protections for those accused of sexual harassment as defined under the regulations. The rule also expands the definition of sex to include gender identity, as you well know. This is going to result in the removal of female-only spaces for women and girls, effectively forcing them to share bathrooms and showers with biological males. It's atrocious, in my opinion. I want to go back to what you said last year when we talked. I asked you specifically about local control, and you stated, quote, when I was at the local level and even at the district and state level, I prefer that those decisions be made at the local level. That's where it should be. That's exactly what you said. Those were your words. You also went further last year and you said, quote, you are working with local school boards to make sure we are staying in our lanes. Our country was designed to have local control. Frankly, I was shocked that you would tell me that last year, given the overreach of the Department of Education. I was glad that you said that, And so now I have even more problem with what's going on, not in the words that you gave last year, but in the actions of the Department of Education, and in particular in this new rule. Do you still stand by those statements that you made last year?
Absolutely.
All right. Having stood by those statements, I'm going to tell you what my districts back home are telling me. I've got 2 letters I want to introduce. Madam Chairwoman, I ask for unanimous consent to introduce into the record an April 30th, 2024 letter by Tyler ISD, which is my largest school district.
Without objection.
I also ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from Van Independent School District dated May 7th, 2024.
Without.
I'll tell you some of the statements that are made by the superintendent to me as it relates to this Title IX atrocious rule. Talks about it being constitutionally overreaching and an illegal edict that is so offensive to our daughters, wives, and mothers. That's one of the statements that he makes to me on the local level. And I can assure you the rest of my school districts share that opinion. Also says in this letter that it is an inexcusable federal assault toward girls and women that has no place in schools. That's what the local communities in Texas, in East Texas, where I represent, what they think about the Title IX letter. From Van Independent School District, it says in their letter, the changes to Title IX forces schools to treat boys as if they were girls and to accept every student's self-declared gender identity. And I've said before, and I say it again today proudly, I say that I believe men and women were created by God with equal and eternal value, but very different. Very different. And it's not up to us to try to change that identity in our humanity. Do you agree with that or you disagree with that?
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. I want to correct some of the provisions under Title IX. It's creating greater protections. You mentioned that it.
I asked you about my statement. Do you agree
process.
or disagree with the statement that I made about our Creator creating men and women differently but equally?
I can tell you what, as a school principal too, that I do believe in local control, but I don't believe that it's my responsibility.
We covered local control last year. I'm asking you a very specific question about the creation by God of men and women and whether or not they are equally but differently created.
It's my responsibility to protect all students, not just the one that some people pick and choose.
Well, this is, that should be an easy question. We've seen this before. People sit before our panel. We've seen it with the college presidents here recently, where there are moral truths, there are moral foundations that seem very evident to a lot of folks, that people that somehow sit in your chair cannot answer directly. It's atrocious, in my opinion. I want to end my statement today, because this is Teacher Appreciation Week, by saying this, because I do appreciate all of the hard work that all of our teachers across this United States actually does for our students day in and day out. In the state of Texas, there are well over 300,000 teachers that serve our 5 million students. I've met with a lot of teachers across my district, and just like you said last year, they don't want the federal government telling them how to do their job and what their job is. It's unfortunate that this administration continues to do just that and issue rules and regulations that are contrary not just to local control, but frankly, morality. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh my God, I was not on the whole time. I was saying
Madam
such
Chair.
amazing
So good to
things.
see you, Mr. Secretary.
Damn it.
I'm absolutely in awe of not only your work with the Department of Education, but just really your performance here today. You are so good at answering questions very clearly and succinctly. And I also appreciated your written testimony, but I'd just like to reflect too, there are so many critical topics that intersect with your purview, and we appreciate that you're here to review the president's annual budget proposal and answer some of the questions from us. Earlier this term, I introduced the AID Act, the Student Aid Act, to make yet again another adjustment to FAFSA, recognizing that there are parents of students going to college, parents who still have student loan debt themselves, but yet their student doesn't qualify for financial aid. And I came up with this idea while knocking doors in Hazel Park, Michigan, and I reached a UAW household, both mom and dad,
work with the UAW in various automotive plants around Metro Detroit. And Dad had said to me, Haley, we're so excited to send our kids off to Michigan State, but yet we didn't qualify for financial aid, even though I'm still sitting on tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt myself. So it's a bill that's received a lot of support from my colleagues. I just wanted to put it on your radar. I also wanted to remind you that in Michigan, our governor, who has been so dedicated to the plight of educators in our schools and has really accomplished some incredible things. Free and reduced lunch for all. I know that's within the Department of Agriculture largely, but it's something that you care deeply about. Free pre-K, as well as free and affordable two-year degree programs, particularly at the community college level. And then lastly, in Michigan, we have been rocked by school shootings. Michigan State, in February of 23, and of course the Oxford school shooting. Students at Oxford High were in middle school when I was marching for their lives in Detroit after the Parkland shooting. And we know that we have a great runway following the bipartisan passage of a gun safety bill, and particularly additional resources that are going to communities to tackle school shootings. Sir, I just want to commend you for your leadership, and thank you so much. And then with my remaining time, I just wanted to give you a few minutes to talk about your work and the administration's work, in particular with the budget on funding for IDEA. Really near and dear to my heart, something that I have rallied all of the Oakland County school system around in terms of full funding for IDEA. But just wanted to get some of your input here on better coordination of services, what we'll get from this budget proposal. Thrilled to see some of the numbers in here with 15.4 for IDEA, as well as some of the different components that are coming down.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. First of all, let me just say,
show Daniels a picture of Melania. She said she was beautiful. Trump responded, according to Daniels, we don't even sleep together, don't worry. Thank you, butterflies.
Are receiving special education services, and it was really important to remember that they receive the core curriculum first, right? They're students first, and then they get extra support. We are asking for an increase in IDEA to get us to I think it's like 10.7% of the funding of it in FY24. So the increase is 10.3 for 25. We recognize that this is not yet keeping with what the federal commitment was set to be, but we are seeking more dollars than has ever been asked before. The students and families deserve it. We know caseloads of special education teachers across the country is exceedingly high, which prevent our students from getting the individualized support that they need.
It's also next to impossible to find
disabilities
really
is critical for us
great
in our budget and the work that
even
we do.
in New York City, it was challenging to find special education teachers. It was just so hard. There just weren't enough of them.
His budget.
There's weren't enough.
It is our responsibility here in the Congress as authorizers on this committee who knock on the door of the appropriators to really push.
Frankly, I wanted one in every class, along with a general teacher.
Education in the United States of America. This will be a game changer.
Frankly, I would want all my teachers to have like the ability.
On the other side of the aisle to
and we did co-teaching models a lot, and it worked. It just needs to be like you need to have enough people.
Ms. Stevens.
They're spread too thin.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Cardona, it's been a busy time for you, and in this time in history, not for very good reasons. This committee is unsettled by the failures of both you and your staff in handling the FAFSA debacle and rising anti-Semitism on college campuses. But I want to start with the FAFSA. Over the past months, my district has been handling a high number of cases for parents seeking help with the FAFSA and how to deal with your department. They can't
She just found out about it today.
They spend hours on hold.
She didn't even know it was. She didn't even know what that was before today.
With zero
I'm
guidance
kidding.
on what
I don't
their
know
next
that.
steps might be. All the while, their kids missed early acceptance deadlines because they didn't know how much financial aid they were going to be working with. That part really frustrates me actually, when I think about, do I get mad about certain things? Those are the kind of things of unresponsiveness. And it's been 100% to
Is
my
that
office's
true? Because I don't feel like I
non-responsiveness. Not even a
knew that.
confirmation
For
of
early
receiving the
admission,
case
I
when
don't
we
think you know
submit
your
one. And I
FAFSA
pride myself
by that
on,
time, do you? I don't
casework.
think
The
you
congressional phone
do.
line for the department of sometimes allows
FAFSA
the team to
season
leave a
is
message,
later, I
but
thought.
no
I
one
could be
ever
wrong.
calls us back. So I've been frustrated.
I don't
Other
think I'm
agencies
wrong.
at least respond, that they'll get back to me with an answer. And so I asked myself, who did you hire? Because it seems unacceptable. And really, quite frankly, I've hired
Who'd you
and fired
hire?
throughout my career people,
Who'd you
and it seems
hire?
pathetic to not be
Who'd
able
you
to at least
hire?
hire people who can
Who'd you
return a
hire?
message. The Department of Education,
I'm a
if it
snarky
exists
woman.
for
I'm a
real purpose,
snarky
it's
lady.
to increase access to education. And you and your
Need more
staff
money
seem
for
to have
teachers.
failed,
Yeah, incentive to enter the field. Yeah,
unfortunately, in
and
the
better
casework and clearing that
conditions.
bar. Let me talk now about another low bar. The
More
department seems to be
co-teaching
struggling
because
with
it
after
lightens the
October 7th.
load. God damn it, it really
Anti-Semites on college
does.
campuses came
And
out
put
in
money into
droves.
helping
Jewish students
co-teachers
have
be
openly stated that
successful.
they feel threatened and unsafe, and some have been physically assaulted.
Treat them like
About a week
doctors.
ago, one
My
rabbi
God,
affiliated
they're like
with
the brain
Columbia
surgeons of
University
the
advised
future.
Jewish students to leave campus for
That's pretty
Passover.
good.
Schools have canceled their commencement ceremonies, and last week, GW University's law school here in DC relocated its final
131
exams to an
viewers in the
undisclosed
house.
insecure
Yeah,
location. Our
thank you,
schools in
Twitter
Oregon
viewers, for
are dealing
coming
with
on
similar
over and
situations,
joining
and I
the
talked to those
OG
university
loungers
presidents,
over here on
and what the future could
YouTube.
look like.
Come on over
It
to
really is the
@RealLolo
greatest
on
crisis in
YouTube. Hit the
American
like,
education in
subscribe, and
decades.
share.
Last week,
Come
before
over and
Senate
chat with
Appropriations
us over
Senate
on
Committee, you mentioned the Department's Office of Civil
YouTube.
Rights roughly had 100.
But welcome, everyone. I'm glad I got in the back door of Twitter.
And the school districts
I'm glad
for
I got in
potential Title
Elon's
VI
back door.
violations. This, of course, is the legal basis for investigations and actions regarding discrimination based on race or religion. In this case, countless Jewish
True.
students. You somewhat touched on it today, but what is the timeline for the resolution of these investigations, and when will penalties, if appropriate, be announced and imposed? And I really would hope that you don't answer, if you give us more money, you'll have those answers.
Thank you for the questions. I agree with you that
I
hate
would
has
go
a
ahead and
place
just
on
say, if you
campuses
gave me
as a
more money,
must
I'd
have.
have the answers.
I just want to go back and say this is the administration that
Hi,
reopened
Crazy
schools,
Ivan.
provided debt
Crazy
relief,
Ivan,
and
Crazy Ivan,
overhauled a
Crazy Ivan.
40-year-old FAFSA system. And while delayed,
They didn't
we
bring
are
up
working
fentanyl
24/7
once.
to serve your the people
Almost
that you
4
represent.
hours.
And I'm committed
Not
to making
one
sure you
mention
have
of fentanyl.
information.
Not
I'll ask
one
someone from
pill.
my team to reach out to you this week. On
Nothing.
questions.
Nothing, honey.
With regard to the anti-Semitism, it's unacceptable, and we take a very strong stance on that. We have more cases open. We've
Come
closed more
to
cases in the
my
last
back
administration
door.
already. We're committed to it. We have guidance within 2 clicks of our website that provides
Yeah.
a Dear Colleague letter that was sent out
Nobody
today,
in my back
a letter that I
door.
sent out
Not right
Friday.
now,
This is something
but-
we take very seriously as well.
Thank
Nothing
you.
wrong.
And
I'm
so
very sex
the
positive.
reason these
It's all
investigations are
good.
important to get through is because it really doesn't seem to protect students when they need
I mean,
it
not
most,
while
and
I'm
that's
live or
immediately.
anything, but
On
that'd be
December
weird.
6th, you received a letter from the leaders of the Jewish Orthodox
Nobody needs to
Jewish
see that.
Congregations of America. They asked you to issue that guidance. And I
No
was glad to
fentanyl.
see this
Not
morning that you
one
issued
little
that new guidance
iota.
for the administrators from pre-K to post-grad to fulfill those Title VI obligations. Mr. Secretary, exactly how many forms of guidance have you now circulated since October 7th?
We've had over 100 actions, and I can tell you with the guidance, I have to say at least 3 or 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. There could be more.
But they make more
Visit
money than,
ed.gov,
and they're
click
treated
on,
better than
supporting
nurses.
campus safety,
Thank
and
you.
there's a whole list there for
Sorry.
yourself and your
I
constituents.
come from a
Thank
family of
you.
nurses.
It also says schools have a legal responsibility to address the discrimination against those students. And it sounds like that you would include when protesters shout from the river to the sea at Jewish students. And yet, out of roughly 10 reference examples this new guidance provides, the chant is never mentioned. So 2 final questions before my time is up. Does the department
Doesn't that
recognize
chant
that screaming
also
from the
have to
river
do
the
with
sea
something
at
else?
Jewish
I
students
think
is a
there's
call for
other.
genocide? And 2, if schools do not follow this guidance, will you impose
mean, in
penalties
and of
such as
itself,
withholding funding?
I could be
as
wrong,
you
but I
committed
thought
to
I heard
Congresswoman
that.
Manning that you will do that?
Calls for genocide are abhorrent, and we stand against those. And if brought
Will
forward
you
in an
withhold
investi-
funding as you committed to Congresswoman Manning?
Absolutely. If schools refuse to adhere to Title VI, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
I like how he's just going ahead
Mr.
and
Schmucker,
answering.
You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you,
And
Secretary.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schmucker, and after your questioning, we will take a break and then come back. Thank you.
My
Thank you,
God,
Secretary, for being here
Virginia.
today.
I got to eat some of these
Deeply
Cheetos. I'm going to
concerned
go off
about the
camera
fact
so I
that your
can eat some
department failed
Cheetos.
2 financial audits
Don't
for
go
2
away.
consecutive
I'm not
years.
going anywhere. I'll be
After
right back.
inspecting
I just
your
got to eat some
department numbers,
Cheetos.
your independent auditor was
It's been
unable to
going
complete
almost
the
4
audit.
hours. I haven't
Instead, was
eaten
forced
anything.
to issue what's known as a disclaimer
So
of
I'm about to
opinion,
eat some Cheetos.
which, by the way, hasn't happened in 2 decades. And it's a really big deal in the auditing world. Your auditor said, in effect, if they had no confidence in your numbers and how the department carries out estimates and assumptions for the direct and FFEL student loan portfolios. My staff followed up and spoke with your auditor and learned that during the course of the 2023 audit, your department discovered 22,000 anomalies in the data. That is the basis for the student loan portfolio. And then, after doing additional investigation, your department discovered another 8 million anomalies in the data. This means that the underlying data you were feeding into the student loan portfolio was just
I'm just
simply
going to
filled
eat
with
on
errors.
camera.
So all in all, a very highly irresponsible financial management from the department, particularly of a $1.6 trillion portfolio owned by 43 million borrowers. If the department were a private bank, you would be held accountable to your investors and you'd be out of business by now. And it certainly undermines any confidence that anyone can have in your estimates and assumptions that the department has used in these portfolios. Why should the Department of Education and the Office of Student Aid be treated any differently than a private financial institution?
Thank you for the questions. I agree with you. That's really important to make sure that we're up to date on our financial audits. And I just want to correct the statement. It wasn't a failure. It was a disclaimer of opinion. Those are 2 different things based on the information that they were provided. We're doing new things that have never been done at the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Number 2,
go fuck
the
yourself.
errors in the data. You're absolutely right. I'm proud that our team found this and is correcting it. It's been there for several administrations. It was our team that found it and is fixing it. We operate on 0.2% of a budget. For a $1.6 trillion
No, I'm very
portfolio.
particular in the
We're
way
not
I
being treated
eat
like
Cheetos,
so what
so
we're
that
asking is for a
I
modest increase in
avoid
budget.
Treated how?
I avoid
I'm sorry, I
excess dust.
No, funding-wise, to administer the
But
$1.6
yes,
trillion
it is white
portfolio, we are
cheddar
operating on
Cheetos.
0.2%.
Those are the only kind I like.
administrative costs. We are asking for
Unfortunately, I
additional
like them
dollars to
too
help
much.
Make sure that we can, but not only implement
I'm not proud.
The comments from auditors, but also improve services for our
But
students.
how do you think we should
Welcome,
be
127
providing additional funding? Do you
viewers.
think
Hi,
the American
everybody on
taxpayer should
Twitter.
be satisfied
Everybody on the
with
shitter.
the funding that you have today?
Welcome.
With the way that you're handling $1.6 trillion in taxpayer dollars?
We found the errors and we're correcting that. We're providing better services, and it's our goal to do
Oh
a better
yeah, I
job
could definitely have some
providing
complaints
services for
about
our borrowers.
administration
Your
in
support of the budget
schools,
would
in
help.
public schools. I can
Want to
I
get
can
to,
make complaints about that.
The clock hour rule, which is the department has reversed what is known as the clock hour rule, which allows career-oriented education programs that are offered at community colleges and career colleges to provide students with the education, with the amount of hours that they feel that students need to be successful in the career, specifically to extend the number of hours to
You filtered yourself?
more
What do
than
you mean?
150% of the state's minimum.
This isn't a filter.
and
This
then
is
still
me,
receive the
darling.
federal financial
This is
aid.
100%
And as
Lolo.
I said, that policy.
I did lower. I was at
It's
4K.
important for a lot of
Camera's
these
stupid.
programs. They're complicated.
So I did go down to
careers, and
1080
the
'cause
schools and
there's
the
no need.
students, feel they
There's no
need
need.
additional hours to be
4K's
adequately prepared.
overdoing
So I
it.
think that policy is going to result
The
in
white
less
ones?
students
Oh
having
my God.
access to education.
Well, they're
and
not. I don't
that will
recommend
lead
it.
them
It's
to
an
these
addiction.
good-paying
I don't
jobs.
want to share my addiction.
In response to industry concerns, the department announced that it will use, and I quote, enforcement discretion when enforcing the rule between July of 2024 and January of 2025. But there's no guarantee for schools that they'll be given the time they need to get all the necessary approvals by state legislators, accrediting agencies, and federal regulators. So first, why the policy in the first place? Why would the government mandate that schools can only offer a bare minimum of hours to students?
Little
Thank you,
fisheye
for that
action.
question. Look, I think we're on the same page. We want to make sure we have opportunities for students to engage in, whether
Wait,
it's
how's that
CTE
go?
or industry-connected fields. We want to make sure that while we're providing greater opportunities, we're also providing high-quality programming. But what I'm hearing from you is that there's some concerns, and we want to make sure that we're listening and responsive to the concerns. So I'll ask my team to follow
I want to ask
up.
one additional question. I'm running out of time. You mentioned discretionary enforcement. I don't know exactly what that means. Can you simply delay the full implementation of the rule until January 2025?
Thank you, sir. We'll take that into consideration, and I'll have my team follow up with you on those.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Smucker. We do have members who are coming back after votes, so we're going to take a break right
We're
now.
gonna take a
for
break.
votes, and we will be back 5
I'm gonna
minutes
go.
after the third vote begins.
Wait, what does that mean? How many votes are we talking about? What? Wait a minute, what? What the fuck? Okay. I don't know what that means. I feel like that's a long break. So what? Okay. Anyway, all right. Let's yeah, hold on. Okay. All right. Anyway, there you go, seagulls. Yeah. That's a fish. That's a fish. You haven't gained any weight? Well, I'm telling you right now, Paul, you eat Cheetos, you'll gain weight. But in all seriousness, Paul, make sure if you can check with your doctor on that too, just to make sure. But I'm sure it's funny that you're not like eating a lot of sugar. I remember when I stopped, I ate so much sugar, like for a couple of years, I gained a bunch of weight. It was really terrible. The lady in the blue has to feed her seagulls. Oh, right. That's right. Virginia. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Lady in blue. She's like the, what's that? No, she's not. She's a terrible person. Virginia Fox is a terrible person. Well, this is interesting, but I'm going to be honest with you. I probably am not going to survive the break. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go and wrap this at the break, and then monitor to see what might happen. I don't know. I might do a chapter of the new book tonight. I'm not sure. It depends. I might just take the night off. I'm sorry. I might just do that. Let me just be not silly about that. And not like wishy-washy, like, oh, I might, no, maybe I don't. No, you eat whole bags of candy. I know. Paul, I did that for years. It's definitely connected to your body's like desire, I guess, to produce or to take in sugar or the carbohydrates. I'm not really sure. I don't understand the nutritionist of it. But sending good thoughts for you, Paul. This will shock you, but Lady in Red is one of my favorite songs. That shocks me. Lady in Red is dancing for me, cheek to cheek, nobody here, bow, bow, except you and me. I mean, it has, yeah, not my favorite. Oh, but it's one of those songs that if you rearranged it, it would be like amazing. And not that it isn't amazing, because I couldn't write it. But I'm also just saying, like, as I'm singing it, I could hear if you slowed that down and changed up the arrangement a little bit, it might be really interesting. Oh, like a ballady, like even more ballady, weirdly ballady, like less cringy. I don't know. Somehow it's a little bit cringy. I don't know. Chris Debug. I think it's a Chris DeBerg tribute album. I hear hit. Actually, I do have some music I need to record. I was playing the night I graduated from high school, and I played putt-putt golf Oh, that's a great memory. Shit, man. Crazy Ivan, that's a fucking great memory. I love that memory. That's amazing. Well done. Ooh, this beauty of my heart. Wait, beauty by my side. Yeah, I don't know. It just was like, stop looking at me, you know? But, you know, what song? There were a lot of songs that were pretty cringy back then. So it's not, you know, it didn't hold the corner of the market on cringe. All right. So again, thank you for coming. I'm so glad I found the back door into Elon's world of shitter because I missed broadcasting to Twitter. That was a great way to expand and invite more people into the lounge. So I'm really happy that I found the back door. Please don't shut it. Please, Mr. Please. You must let me restream. On my fault. Well, never mind. It doesn't matter. Talk about Max cringe. Anyway, thanks again for everyone who stopped by. Certainly in YouTube, thank you so much, loungers. You guys are the best. Fucking best chat on the internet. You really do need to come to the chat when it comes to Lolo's Lounge because the people here are the nicest and the smartest. And we don't tolerate any fools. So please come and stop by the lounge on YouTube. But thank you for stopping by on Twitter. We really appreciate that. That's so nice. It's nice to be back. And I'll be back tomorrow morning. Oh my God, there we go. Tomorrow morning, same time. So it's about 7 a.m. I think is when it's scheduled for. 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, everything in between and outside of that. Wednesday for our friends down under. I mean, there's all kinds of things happening. I'm not even sure what time it is in Australia when I go live tomorrow morning at 7, but I'm sure someone will tell me. But yeah, so please stop by tomorrow morning. We have another, like, I'm sure very painful House or Senate, probably House. I didn't see much happening with the Senate this week, but we have another House committee hearing tomorrow. I don't honestly remember it is what off the top of my head. Sorry, but there's a placeholder for it on my channel at Real Lolo on YouTube. So at Real Lolo on YouTube, come and stop by and join us tomorrow morning. Also this week we started a new book for bedtime stories. We started it last night. It's a heavy book. It's a novel, but it's about climate crisis. And we started with chapter 1 last night, and it's The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson, who is a very well-respected science fiction novelist, science fiction writer. And this book got rave reviews. And so what we do is we kind of break it down and we kind of, I comment on it as well as read it, but in hushed tones. So it's more like a bedtime story. And we do a couple chapters here and there. So a little different experience, but that's also something available to you here at Lolo's Lounge. So thanks again for stopping by. And I will definitely see you tomorrow morning. If I don't see you tonight, I don't know. We might do spaces or something. I have no idea what's going to happen. Live in the moment because it's called a present for a reason. It's called the present for a reason, y'all. It's a gift. All right. I will see you. Where's my music? Oh, there it is. Later. Bum, 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 bum. Bye bye. Bye bye. I can't seem to get the tune of that today, but that's okay. Anyway, Lolo out.